Welcome back, everybody, to another live Ask the Expert live Q&A. And today we've got Tony Thornton back with us. Tony's the executive director of the American Fence Association and just all-around good guy. Tony, how are you?
Man, life is good. I hope everybody's doing well today.
Absolutely. Another day above ground's a good day, right?
Amen. Amen.
Well, Tony, first and foremost, I appreciate you taking time out and coming on with us. I know you've got a lot going on, and it means a lot.
Well, I appreciate it. Like you and I've always talked, if it's time to talk fence, let's do it, you know.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, Tony, I'd put a little bit in the title and the description, but you've put together basically a state of the industry report. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, you know, Joe, I'll be honest with you, I've been real hesitant to do this because of so much, you know, volatility and changes that's going on. But we're going to talk about what I see and what I'm getting from economic experts in several different areas of our industry. You're getting the calls or emails. I'm definitely getting the calls and emails every day. So hopefully this will just give a lot of the viewers an opportunity to better understand what challenges that not only they are having, but the manufacturers, the producers, the mills, and everybody else. You know, it's a domino effect. And we're going to talk about each of those areas today.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we talked briefly before we went live, but I think it's important for everyone to remember that this is accurate as of June 26th, right? I mean,
right.
It's different on June 27th.
Yep. You wake up Monday morning, there's probably going to be a change in a lot of what we just talked about. But the big picture, you know, I like to say the 10,000 foot elevation is the same. And I think that's what I'm going to try to get across to everybody today through the broadcast.
Absolutely. You know, and yeah, that's it. Things are changing daily, you know, but if nothing else, this provides kind of a baseline. As of today, here's where things stand, and they might change minutely from here, but if nothing else, this gives us a baseline. So, guys, what I want to do, so Tony's got 8 different areas that we're going to talk about, the five fencing disciplines, and also 3 bonus categories, maybe you might say. So we're going to talk about vinyl, wood. Now, when we're talking about wood, we'll talk about all wood, and then specifically Western red cedar. We're going to talk about ornamental, chain link and pipe, agricultural fencing itself will be our 5th. Then we're going to go into gate operators and labor, because labor is a whole issue unto itself. And then the last one being transportation issues, you know, supply line issues, which I think is a pretty major contribution to what we're seeing today.
Absolutely.
So guys, what we're going to do, so here's the plan. And we're going to start doing lives a little bit differently, because I understand, you know, these things go for a couple hours, 2.5 hours. So I understand not everyone's got 2.5 hours to sit and watch a replay. Completely understand. So Jeremy and I and Will, we all sat down and we thought about it. So what we're going to start doing is clipping out, you know, go through the live and clip out, you know, the pertinent details of each section and turn those into, you know, a new video, right? So instead of taking a 2.5 hour video, we'll have several 8-minute clips. Make it a little bit more digestible to watch the replay. I say that to say we're going to say hi to everyone here in just a minute. And then we're going to get into this. And then after each one of these disciplines, after each one of the subject matters, if you will, we'll pause and take comments and questions, and then we'll roll into the new one. So just because we're not saying hi and answering questions at that particular moment doesn't mean we're not going to circle back around and say hello. Tony, does that sound like a plan?
Man, that's a good plan. That's a real good plan.
All right.
It's a good plan because I can't not say something about that awesome shirt and hat that you got on. Okay.
These were given to me by a very good set of people. So, well, let's talk about it for a second, because the last time we saw each other was a couple weeks ago, just outside Lincoln, Nebraska, and Waverly, Nebraska. We built some fence.
Yeah. Absolutely. We had a great turnout. You know, that I think that was your first experience of what we call on the road training with the American Fence Association. We're getting huge bonus points. You know, people are really enjoying those training seminars between the fencing and the gate automation training that we're doing. We've averaged approximately 100 people through both the Ohio event and the Waverly, Nebraska event. Great chapters, great people, great sponsors. It was just an awesome event until Friday, or when the I don't know what you'd call it, a wind tsunami came through, and I hope everybody saw those videos because it's actually a little funny.
Yeah.
But we made it. We made it.
We were sitting in. So let me just describe this a little bit. So 2 days, Thursday, Friday, and each day is spent with a different instructor on a different discipline. So my first day was spent with Tony and talking about chainlink, residential and commercial. And I'm telling you what, Tony, you worked us. This wasn't a theory training. This was hands-on training. The second day was supposed to be vinyl.
That.
We're going to be we're talking about vinyl with Ken Throckmorton and Mark Olson. Well, we're sitting there in the tent that Friday morning, and during the pre-training briefing, they're in the facility. You say, all right, it's gonna rain for a little bit, but listen, we're not made out of sugar. We're not going to melt. Let's go build some fence. Okay, all right, I can get behind that. Well, we get down there to the tents, and we're looking out and looking at these storm clouds. I'm like, down in Southwest Missouri, we get tornadoes. We're at the end of Tornado Alley, and that kind of looks dangerous. Like, we learned to know what looks dangerous. And Ken Throckmorton, he was trying to drive this bus, right? He's like, guys, it's going to rain. We're going to be – you heard Tony say it's going to rain. It's going to be okay. We're going to build some fence. Just let's talk. So we talked about theory for the first few minutes, then we go build fence is kind of the structure. So we're still – he's trying to get us dialed in on the slides, right? He said, guys, just don't worry about what's outside that tent. Okay. All right. Okay. And then a cold wind came. And now it was hot. It was 95 degrees the day before. Cold wind came. And I thought, okay, I know the telltale signs of danger here. We probably ought to go sit in our trucks at the very minimum just to see. And boy, if it didn't come a blowing storm.
And the vinyl that you were going to install that day ended up in the next county.
Yeah.
It was a fun activity, but typical fence day. That's what I told everybody. Right. It's just another day in a fence man's life, right?
right. That's right. Well, we were in the middle of a cornfield, and it had been well treated. There wasn't a rock in this place. You could dig a 2-foot hole with your boots. So I was like, man, if we get a little bit of water on this, I think we're going to be knee deep in this here in just a little bit. So we probably ought to get to moving. And then what do you know? What was it? An hour later, you guys went down there, and it was 6, 8.
It was a lake. Yeah, it was a lake. Yeah.
Well, and I'll give this to Matt. So the night before this, he had said, "Hey, we're calling this Project Mallard. We're gonna have Lake Mallard out there, and we're gonna get some kids fishing." And I tell you what, if Matt didn't have Lake Mallard up the next day,
absolutely, that's fast paced, man. That's fast paced.
I mean, it's probably not there anymore, but it was there for a little bit.
This is true.
Let's say hi to a few people. Let's see who's here. Roger Bittencourt has been waiting very patiently. He was here half an hour early. If we're being honest with each other, he was here before I was. All right. And then Sean King, I think you know this guy, says, what's up? Mr. Fence out of Evansville, Indiana. Mike Parnell, what is up to you, sir? Roger comes back, says, hello, Joe. Hello, Tony. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Roger. Let's see. Heritage Fence says, hey, guys, all the way from Philly and an AFA member. Gotta love it. Greg Warner says, hello from Pensacola, Florida. Very nice area. We're planning a little jaunt down your way over to Fort Walton not too long. Guys see the sights over there. Kasurk Distributor says, good morning, gentlemen, and hello from Eastern Pennsylvania area. A lot of East Coasters this morning.
Yeah. Hey, they got an hour on us.
I know. They've been up for a little while.
That's right.
Speaking of East Coasters, Mike Parnell says he's precision fence in Sumter, South Carolina. Mike, I was actually just down in your area. We were, I don't know if you know, Aiken, South Carolina, just north of Augusta, Georgia. Wife's sister lives over there. Anyway. Speaking of Ken Throckmorton, here he is. Fence needs installed. Let's go. He said that over and over. You know what? So Cannon Johnson was on top of this. Cannon Johnson with Jackson Fence was on top because he was looking at his radar and he's like, guys, hey, we need to watch this, guys. And Ken was kind of giving him a little bit of grief. He says, sit down, it's going to be okay. Ken said, I don't know, guys. I don't know. Let's go. Sure enough, I think Cannon was onto something. But Ken's job was to drive that bus. Ken's job was to get that fence installed. So Ken did an admirable job till the tent blew away. And then that was pretty much over. Yeah.
Yeah.
Roger Ben Court says, hello. Roger's on top of this. Roger's right. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up. Also, if you're watching us on YouTube, click subscribe. Tony, here's an interesting fact. 98% of the people that watch these videos aren't subscribed. I thought that was pretty shocking.
That is. Yeah.
So if we've got 16 people watching, that means only like a couple of them are subscribers. The rest of you folks,
push that button.
That's right. That's right. Durf Boy says, hi, everyone. Hello, Durf Boy. Hip Square Fence. Good morning, gentlemen. Hip Square, good morning back at you. I like that name. Durf Boy's from Ohio. Okay, so we're getting a little bit more Midwest. We're moving away from the East Coast. We're getting more Midwest. From Honeydew Home Improvements. Glad to have you. Mike says, I hate to miss you. We were only there for a little bit, Mike. We were there for a graduation. My wife's nephew, graduated high school. So we scooted over there. I'll tell you guys, I'll tell you a story, and then Tony and I can sit and talk about this subject matter for the rest of the time, and we don't want to do that. But flying out there and flying back solidified in my mind that I am not made for commercial aviation. And I'm thinking this while I'm sitting in Atlanta for 4 hours, and I'm going to Augusta, which is like a couple hour drive. It's not even 3 hours. I was in Atlanta sitting in a terminal longer than it would have taken me just to drive to Augusta.
Absolutely.
And I was like, you know what? Tony and Mark and Luke, all these guys are pilots, and they just fly wherever they want to go. And they get there a lot faster, and they don't have to sit in airports and deal with TSA and all the rest of that nonsense. So I started flight training. Yesterday. So
I'm so excited for you, for our conversation. It's a life changer. I'm telling you.
It is. I'm excited. And one thing I shared with Tony was, I tell you what, so it's completely different being up front in the airplane. It's a lot different. And it is terrifying and exciting at exactly the same time.
That's right.
And if that sounds confusing, it is.
It absolutely
is. But so, you know what's funny, though? I was talking to Caleb Roth, Stand Still Experts. His flight training starts Monday. He's also
man, we're gonna have a whole fence crew of a squadron of fence guys flying planes. That'll be fun.
So what we'll have to do is have a separate fence section at like Sun and Fun. We'll all fly in, have the fencers section, and it will the security will be top notch.
Yeah.
Kentucky Rainman says, Old Glory Fencing checking in. Well, welcome to you. Mark Nutson's with us. He's at his Nevada office, Mound House, Nevada. Not Nevada.
Good morning,
Mark is nothing if not very active in the social media world.
Mark and I go back a long way. Good folks.
Kenny Dude, good morning, all. Excited to learn from Tony. Kenny, you and me both.
He loaded that wagon.
I tell you, so to have Kenny say he's going to learn from you is high praise. Have you met Kenny Dugan?
I've met so many people. I could say yes or no, and it'd probably be wrong. So probably along the way.
Yeah. Tell you what, this guy. So he's on the fence cleaning, staining side of the fencing industry, the cleaning and maintenance side. I tell you what, you want to know anything chemical related as far as, what mixes, what doesn't mix, how to use it, when to use it. That's the guy. Like literally we were in Nashville for the fence staining university. And we were at a dinner table and I just sat back and just soaked it all in. Just tried to soak it in.
Yeah.
But, all right. One more. Jason Reeves says, hello from Memphis, Tennessee. Jason, hello.
Close to my hometown. Yeah.
Yep. if you guys are just joining us, so what we're going to do now is we're going to dive deep into Tony's state of the industry. And like we said before, keep in mind, this is accurate as of right now. It could be inaccurate as of this afternoon. You just never know. But this is going to give us at least a baseline to say, as of this point in time, here's where the industry sits. And knowing that it can move from here. But there's going to be some subjects here that I think, they're going to be accurate for a while. Especially, so if you guys get to the end of this, stick with us because we're going to be talking about labor and transportation, supply line issues. I think those two subjects will probably last for quite a while.
Yeah.
When we're talking about fencing disciplines, we're going to be talking about materials. That subject matter can change, in an instant. We'll get to it. But there's big news in the chainlink industry last week. Was it? Yeah, I think it was last week with Master Halco's wire machine going down. Anyway, all right. So Tony Thornton, let's get into your report.
All right. Well, first, let me throw out a disclaimer. Okay. Like Joe mentioned, what we talk about today, when you wake up early Monday morning, things are probably going to change. What our goal today is to give you a 10,000 foot elevation as to kind of what's going on, what's causing you the challenges, and most importantly, when possibly you can see some light at the end of the tunnel. So the disclaimer first and foremost is, this is information that I've gathered from peers in the industry that specialize in all of these areas. Tony is not an economist. The American Fence Association is not as well. So the information I'm forwarding to you is from very close friends and peers in the industry that was open enough and willing to share because they want to educate, our industry as much as we as the association do as well. So we all know that the demand for fencing is up. The work challenges are up. And unfortunately, the supply chains are down. So what is causing all of this? I think, like Joe mentioned, the last two pieces are more prevalent to what's causing the problems. But let's talk about each area of our industry more specifically. You'll see me look down quite often because I got a page full of notes from my peers and the folks that opened up to me. So y'all bear with me. But the vinyl industry is what we're going to cover first. Okay. Most contractors are seeing about a 12 to 14 week lead time. Not all, but most, if you look at it from an average. And with that, that's not even including your transportation challenges. So we've got to talk about that on the tail end of this thing. The good news is, from my peers in the industry, it looks like a level off will probably start happening toward the end of the year. So a lot of you guys do vinyl. We know what the challenges are with product delivery and orders. They can't guarantee. They can just tell you, I'll get to it when I can. And all of you know that special order is just like gone. Just what I've got here, what I produce, fast and mass is what you're going to be able to get your hands on. So again, the good news is that hopefully we're going to see a little bit of a level off toward the end of the year. Now with that, we all know that we probably won't see much fluctuation in prices. I mean, once things go up, it's hard to come back down. 1 or 2 points, one way or the other, will probably kind of be where we are from an industry standpoint in the vinyl market. But these peers feel very, very confident that we're going to be in pretty good shape by the end of the year. So those are really the 2 bullet points up front. And I think all of you guys understand where those 12 to 14 weeks are coming from. So, Joe, I'm sure you've probably heard from a lot of your listeners is the fact that the reason for the vinyl challenge has been raw material, raw materials that go into the vinyl. I got a good friend that calls it the batter, everything that's mixed up, okay, that makes this vinyl. More specific is the one challenge that has happened to us is that I got to read this. It says, due to major U.S. plastic consumption, overall plastic consumption, rising, and the additives that go into the vinyl batter is what's really caused us the largest challenge. So even though the rising and the additives for the vinyl has been a challenge in our market, just think about all the other plastic components that's out there that,
Nope.
Right? I mean, plastic. I mean, how many of us drink a bottle of water every morning, right? So anything and everything to do with plastic has put this challenge on it. And there's a lot larger producers of bottles and everything else that goes into plastic than the fencing industry. So we're kind of low tier when it comes to priorities of getting resin and additives to us. So just keep that in mind. Most suppliers and wholesalers have seen 50 to 60% cutbacks on delivery. And that's all because of the challenges of the raw material, the resin, the additives, and then the labor issues that we're going to talk about more specifically here shortly. So that's the biggest challenges that we're dealing with on the vinyl side. Again, special delivery, special orders. If you've got a close relationship, you may get, you're probably not.
Yeah.
But once you think about the 12 to 14 week delay on getting vinyl, then you've got to talk about, okay, how do I get it? Okay.
Yeah.
The challenges of getting that truck to you or that rail car to you. And we're seeing more and more demand for vinyl on the retail end at the big box movers, which is also causing us a lot of challenges in the industry as well. So the bullet points I want you to take away from the vinyl aspect is we're still averaging 12 to 14 weeks. Some are less, some are higher, but that's an average. Calculate in your transportation issues, and we're going to talk more about that later. But understand that these guys get it, okay? One specific area that we're going to talk about, every one of these disciplines that we're talking about, those manufacturers, those producers would love to add a third shift, a fourth shift. But then you run into the labor challenges. And if you don't have raw material to produce and you don't have the labor to produce it, then you are at what position you are. There's not much you can do. So that's kind of the high points with the vinyl issues. Again, the raw material shortages are improving. So hopefully we'll see some production flows increase. And then hopefully when a lot of this governmental agency entitlement stuff goes away, we'll see the labor force come back and you'll see a ramp up. And I think that's why my peers in the industry, the final industry, are saying that we're going to see a level off and an increase in production toward the end of this year, first of next year. What's your thoughts, Joe?
Yeah, much the same. So a friend of mine owns a pretty substantial plumbing company here in town. And so they've been dealing with this issue too, because think about all of your water pipes in new build homes are going to be plastic, right? Or a version of plastic. All your drain lines, we're talking about PVC, that sort of thing. But one thing you don't think about is he said, hey, they use resin in water softeners. They use resin in hot water heaters. They use resin in all of that too. So the cost of hot water heaters has tripled. And this is just how he explained it to me. So I haven't fact checked or anything, but he had said there was a big fire in a resin factory out on the Gulf Coast, and that company has come out and said, hey, with building costs the way they are right now, we're not rebuilding this right now. We won't be rebuilding the factory.
Right.
So to your point, resin is a major component in anything plasticized, whether we're talking about PVC, whether we're talking about anything plastic related. Resin is a big part of that, right? And so that's going to be a huge hurdle to overcome.
Well, let's also consider what we would say add-ons. Okay, so now let's get past the production. Okay, it's extruded, it's shipped out, and these guys are routing and getting ready to go out. Pretty much your job lot orders are a minimum. Okay, where most people are right now is give me a truckload of extruded product to where I can route my own, and even that's a larger challenge. But now let's think about all the other pieces. It's the post caps. It's the vinyl, lights. It's the hinges, and all of those extra pieces that are put onto this vinyl project as an end result. All of those are having some of the same challenges.
Sure.
So, production in the U.S. or production overseas or wherever it's coming from, they're all fighting the same challenges, and it's the challenge of the labor and the transportation, if they can get it produced in their particular area. So I think you got to look at it as a collective area and all the pieces line up.
Well, yeah, and another component of that is going to be aluminum. right, for your stiffeners. I mean, that's going to be, I know we're going to get into ornamental here in a little bit, but.
And that's that add-on.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Yep.
So one thing, and you hit on a couple times. The one thing to make clear is, this 10 to 14 or 12 to 14 week lead time is for it to be complete and ready to ship, right? And like you said, we're going to touch on transportation in a little bit, but it could, if you're looking at 10 to 14 or 12 to 14 weeks, it could be 16 weeks before it's on your lot, or longer, depending on what transportation issue you're going through right now.
Look, we know as an industry that we've got some phenomenal U.S.-based manufacturers that are producing as fast as they can, as long as they can get the risins, the additives, the batter to put this stuff out. Like I said, they would love to ramp up a third shift, but without manpower and product, you can't do that. One thing that's occurred in every area of our market, unfortunately, I'm going to say this, unfortunately, is the import product. The import product is trying to capitalize on the U.S.-based manufacturing being down, and maybe they were able to get some product over there, or maybe the product wasn't or doesn't meet the expectations, especially the ASTM standards that we need it to be. But we've seen a huge influx in every area: vinyl, wood, chain link, pipe, everything that the U.S. manufacturers and most of us try to utilize and support. The imports are coming in from China, Japan, and other areas that are bringing the price down, but yet it's a lot of times a good product, but probably much less an inferior product than what we manufacture here in the U.S. That's just my opinion.
Yep, but I would agree. In talking with other fence guys, like in Nebraska or just in general, the feeling is I would like high quality material, but I need material.
Yes.
So I think that's what the import that's the problem that the import market is capitalizing on is there are contractors out there willing to accept lower quality goods in order to have material for their clients.
I've got more calls this year than any other time about, hey, what do you know about this product? What do you know about that manufacturer?
Yeah.
And I tell them all, be careful, because your credibility as a company is on the line. If you degrade the product that you're installing, it's going to show up as a defect a year from then, 2 years from then. It's going to ding you, your credibility as an organization and your company. So just be careful. Be patient. That's what most of these peers have said. Be patient. The suppliers are doing all they can. Manufacturers doing all they can. So I think that's kind of the high points on the vinyl aspect of it.
Yeah, the one silver lining, if there is one here, is that when you're talking to people in other industries, whether it's plumbing, heating, roofing, anyone, they're all facing these issues, right?
Absolutely.
So I say that to say the consumer has already heard this. The consumer already knows that there's issues with all products, getting anything in.
Yeah.
So it's an easier conversation to have with clients right now to say, hey, listen, are there materials out there? Yes. Do they meet my standards? No. To get materials that meet my standards, it's going to take a little bit longer. If you're willing to wait for that, I think we'll have a better product.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, very good, Tony. Very good. I think that wraps up the vinyl. You got anything else to add on the vinyl component of the state of the industry?
No, I think that hits the high points. Be patient. Understand what your time frames are. Understand what we're going to talk about from the labor and the transportation issues here shortly. And I see some very good comments over here in your comment section. So.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Very good. All right, guys. So like I said, we're going to get to comments in between. So what we're trying to do is keep these into snippets. That way we'll snip them into separate content. So now let me scroll up a little bit and get to some comments. Yeah, because I saw them as they came through here, and I wanted to talk about it. So this gets into chain link as well, vinyl coated chain link. So vinyl coated chain link is kind of a double whammy, isn't it?
Yes, that's exactly what it is. Double whammy is the exact term you should use. Your challenge for the fabric side, which we're going to talk more specific here shortly. But when you're talking about the coating that goes on it, okay, that falls right back into a lot of what we're talking about. That's a different type of batter, okay.
Sure.
But at the same time, those challenges that we talked about, the final industry is the same thing that the PVC coating and vinyl coating that's on a lot of our fabric out there. And even, the inserted slats, that goes into fencing or prefabricated chain link with inserted slats already. That's another huge challenge on the manufacturing side. So, the Kentucky hit the nail on the head, and don't think about ordering some special color right now. PVC coated, 6 gauge. You may or may not see it by the end of the year because they're just trying to keep up with the normal production levels right now.
Well, that's it. Is they're trying to produce their highest demand items first.
Exactly.
Sense.
It's
the old Henry Ford quote. You can get any color you want as long as it's black.
I love that. Yeah.
But that holds true. We have a client here, so we service Bass Pro Shops. Their world headquarters is here in Springfield. Well, Bass Pro Shops color is green.
Yeah.
And best believe the fence going around whatever they want built is green.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of hard conversations going on right now because Mr. Morris and his team are not used to hearing no.
I can't get it. Yeah.
Right. It's how much will it cost to get it done? Well, it's not a cost issue. It's really not. It's availability problem. But no, yeah. So you're spot on here with PVC and chain link. You got to get the chain link manufactured first, which is a problem. And then the PVC coating, the vinyl coating over the chain link is going to still going to deal in resin, right? Resin's the binder. They kind of that's the way it's described to me. It's the binder that kind of holds this stuff together. It's the glue, if you will.
Yeah.
So it's anything resin based is going to have problems. Mark Nelson says MFT still ships 98% post caps and gate hardware in 24 hours. Why they're 100% American made. There you go. So if you need hinges,
that just tells you when you've got control of your manufacturing process and you've got good negotiations with those that are providing you the components to be prepared, that just says that Mark and his team are doing a good job. So well done.
Absolutely. We have a friend from across the pond.
Hey.
Wedgwood says hi from UK. Wedgwood Joinery. Very good. It is 16:30. Good grief.
Hey, you're going to learn that being a pilot these days. You're going to learn that.
That's what I went through the other day is converting to Zulu time. Yeah, converting to Zulu and then coming out of Zulu time. You want to turn your brain into pretzels. You just try to figure that out.
Exactly.
Roger says, not trying to get political. However, when restrictions are placed on the oil fossil fuel industry, one is hard-pressed to find any industry that is not affected.
Absolutely.
I think that's a valid point. I really do.
And to Roger's point, that's not political. That just is what it is. Okay. No. You always use the term, no matter what side of the aisle you're on, it is what it is. But that's true. Okay. Because, the oil and gas industry, the fossil fuel industry, that impacts everything that we do. And we're going to talk a little bit about why we're seeing some of the things that we're seeing because of that here toward the end of the show.
Well, to your point, the plastics consumption in the United States is the main contributor here, right?
Exactly.
So plastics and plastic goods are the primary consumption of petroleum products in the United States.
That's right.
They're fuel doesn't touch it, unleaded, diesel, whatever. Fuel doesn't touch it. Other manufacturing doesn't touch it. Plastics are the main consumption of plastics manufacturing is the main consumption of petroleum. So if you cut petroleum, you cut plastics. And
prices go up.
Listen, I'm looking around the studio here, and I'm hard pressed to find something that doesn't have plastic.
I did the same thing when we were talking about it earlier. I was looking around the room here and saying, well, there's a plastic bottle, there's a plastic case on my cell phone, there's plastic in my computer, everything. I even thought there's plastic on the back of this hat, right?
That's right. That's absolutely right. Well, and I've got from this week's video, the video that went up this week was talking about chain link fittings, what chain link fittings use, but got some vinyl coated here, but there's just plastic everywhere. It is what it is. So it's easier to manufacture. Molding plastic is easier to produce than so say on this remote, if you were to make this case out of some sort of metal, it would cost significantly more.
Exactly.
You can simply mold this plastic into whatever shape they need. I understand the reason we use it, but it's a contributing factor. It has to be.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mark says, amen, Roger. All right. Jason Reeves, what do y'all know about the wood industry? Materials are still on back order. Well, Jason, I tell you what.
That's up next.
Incredible segue. All right. So
good job, Jason. Good job.
Wood is number 2. Wood is absolutely next. So, guys, what we'll do is, so now we're going to get into the wood. Give us a little bit to get through this segment, and then we'll come back to your questions. But as we're talking about this, drop your questions in. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's a good chance we'll see them and just bring it up during our conversation, maybe. Yeah. But after this segment, that's when I'll actually bring the comments up. We'll talk about it a little bit more. All right. So, Tony, in the Midwest, specifically in Southwest Missouri, our company builds primarily wood. So that's what I'm best versed in is talking about the wood industry. And you want to talk about an industry that's really been hit hard. I mean, I understand they all have, right? But it seems like wood continues to have just problems after problems. What's going on with the wood industry, specifically the wood fencing industry?
Well, let me ask you a question. I'm going to turn this on you. Okay. And I knew that you were primarily wood.
Yeah.
So what challenges have you hit? What type of lead times have you seen? And what are your manufacturers and suppliers kind of telling you? And the reason I'm asking you that is I feel very confident that the bullet points that I have listed here from my peers in the industry are going to line up. But instead of Tony telling us, let's hear from a contractor. Let's hear from a professional in the industry that is challenged with this. And it's going to resonate with, Jason and all the others that are on the call today. And then let's talk about these bullet points that's probably going to kind of bring it all together. So I ask you.
Yeah. So, and to answer the question, I guess I'll back up. So prior to this crazy crisis we're in, the pandemic, if you will, we offered both the treated pine product and a Western red cedar product. So the treated pine was the first to go. So we were dealing in number one grade treated pine. Number one got incredibly expensive, and then in pretty short order just left the fencing market. They started substituting for number 2 or number 2 better, and which, the grading process. I mean, it's smart on the wood industry, right, to say, well, number 2 is almost a number 1, but if you compare the two together, a number 1 and a number 2 better, and we're not even talking about prime or anything like that, just number 1 versus number 2 better, there's a significant quality difference. There really is, especially from the consumer's perspective, where they're only looking at this thing visually. They're looking at mainly knot holes, right? So number 1 went away, and number 2 was substituted for the same price as what number 1 was being charged for, which is a little bit crazy, right? Because we all know that number 2 should come at a discount because it's a discount. It's a lower quality board. So you would expect to pay a little bit less. Not the case. And then the price just continued to climb. So to compare, where we were paying, a year and a half ago, we were paying around $7.50 or $8 for a number 1 4x4x8 pressure treated pine. The prices got up to $15 to $16 for a number 2 4x4x8 pressure treated pine. And that kind of made our decision for us that we were done offering treated pine. Just because at that point, when we're talking about post 4x4x8, you're almost to the cost of a steel post at that point.
You're right.
So now we need to talk about value, right? Is the value of this wood post, does it match the quality? Like, is it a good value to the customer? And I really didn't think it was. When we could have a steel post for 50 cents more a foot. That was a no-brainer. So we moved away from treated pine and we moved into Western red cedar. At roughly the same time, the majority of the rest of the industry was.
I had to. Yeah.
It was this way coast to coast. You were seeing people make these decisions at the same time, which, Tony, is kind of, it's interesting to talk about because typically here in the Midwest, we follow the coast when we're talking about building trends or anything like that. There's a lag between East Coast, West Coast, and the Midwest. If we're talking about designs, it's typically a couple years, right?
Yep.
And sometimes it's more fast-paced than that, obviously. But it was surprising to see this all happen pretty much real time, coast to coast and in between.
Absolutely.
Which means that put an incredible strain on the Western red cedar market.
Yep.
I mean, there's only so many mills. Now, why are there only so many mills is probably a conversation to have. A certain mill company, I guess you could say, bought up 2, 3, 4 pretty large mills and closed them down prior to the pandemic. So that could have something to do with this. Just less mills producing means
all of this bills, and I'm seeing some of these comments, and they're spot on, and I've got some answers for you. So it's nice to hear from your perspective as a professional fence contractor that primarily does the wood market. And I'm going to preface this whole conversation about the Western red cedar, especially, and the pressure treated, especially, in the fact that we've got to look at the overall all wood market first. Okay. Sure. We got to look at it from that perspective. Yeah. And what you're going to see out of this is that the fence industry, okay, if you were to say, okay, where do we line up on the totem pole as far as priority to a mill? We're way down at the bottom. Well, okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's exactly the same thing I've heard is, in other episodes, we've talked about profit margin, right?
Yep.
Focus on, as a contractor, you have to focus on what makes you money. So when we're talking about fence materials, from a lumber mill perspective, the fencing cuts are the lower margin cuts, in comparison to building materials, namely, and they've got higher margin cuts to make. So if you're a contractor, if you're a mill, and you have, say, 10 different items, but you can only make 2, right? You're going to choose the 2 that have the highest margin. I would.
Absolutely.
And unfortunately, those aren't the fence cuts, right? And not that is a very 30,000-foot view on, I think, what's going on.
But that's relevant, and we're going to talk about that. But I want to go back to what I said. We've got to look at the overall wood market as a whole, and we all know that the residential home building, industry right now is at an all-time high. I mean, they build houses in this Dallas-Fort Worth market like, it's like dominoes, boom, 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 and they're done in 90 days to 120 days, and it's already pre-sold. I mean, if you look, out there to try to find a house right now, it's either contingent or it's a contract. I mean, unless you know somebody that's got something behind the scenes, that's how strong the housing market is right now. And throughout the country, the housing market is absolutely exploding. So now that's the first supply. Okay, wood is going to be supplied to that industry way before the fencing guys, and then everything in between. And I'm gonna speak to what you just said. Okay, if there's a Western red cedar mill, okay, that has the capability of cutting up all types of different sizes, shapes, and lengths, okay, they're going to produce the products that's going to bring them the most revenue and profit first. Okay, so the large 6x6, the 8x8, the pergolas, all that stuff, log cabins, you name it. Those are the profit margins, and then we're down at the bottom. Okay, even though we think 1x6.6 is the primary, market for the Western red cedar mills, we're not. Okay, we're just a piece of the big puzzle. But let's talk about this. Okay, first and foremost, we all know that the lumber market demand is absolutely exploding. Okay, as a whole, right? And with that, we've seen a huge price increase. We know that it's inevitable when you got, demands are high, supplies are short. I'm going to go back and talk about why the supplies are short. Okay, I saw a couple of comments over here asking about meals. Right now, let's talk about delivery time. Right now, from peers in the industry that I've talked to, and I got 3 different friends that work in 3 different segments for 3 different suppliers. They've all told me they're averaging about 12 to 14 week delivery time on most, ready to ship out And then you add the transportation demands on it, which is ending up being about a 16 to 20 week turnaround from the time it leaves the mill, gets on a truck, gets on a barge, or gets on a train, and it gets to a supplier's house. 16 to 20 weeks. I mean, that's just relevant. That's what we're seeing right now. Okay. If you look at the overall big picture, okay, again, wood fence is a small piece of that. And I saw a comment from one of the people here about mills shutting down. Yep. Mills are running as full of capacity as they can right now, but there's two things that's affecting them to produce more. The number one is they can't get logs, okay? If we can't cut trees and we can't get logs for our industry, then the mills can't cut it. That's the first challenge. That's what every one of my peers in the industry told me, Tony, every mill, whether it's a Western red cedar mill or a whitewood mill or whatever, these mills all over the country, they cannot get product fast enough to meet the demands. And then again, you put the pecking order in, we're down at the bottom. Sure. So that's number one. Number two is the labor shortage. We're a mill that could be, at a higher capacity of output, can't because they don't have enough manpower, and then you got to think about the mitigation. Maybe they can't get 6 foot apart, and all that kind of stuff, not getting political. Okay. Right. So what I want our industry to understand is our mills for the fencing industry is absolutely doing everything they can to get that product out their door and get it to us. But also they've got to put the priorities on all these other things before they cut that 1x6/6 or that 1x4/6 or whatever it may be. A lot of these Western red cedar mills actually shifted to a lot of white wood, product out there that helped mitigate some of the supply, especially if you're staining. That's a good thing. I mean, whitewood and or Western red cedar, both of them are going to last, especially after you seal and you stain. So understand that these guys are doing everything that they can. And here's where every one of them told me, okay, we talked about delivery time. Everybody knows that. Everybody says, well, Tony, when is this going to level off? Unless we see something drastically change within the next few months to the end of the year, you're not going to see a level off with production levels coming back to where we need them until probably the end of the second quarter of 2020 and possibly even into the first or the third quarter. Now, that's not Tony Thornton telling you that. That's 4 different industry experts that saying we're doing all that we can. We're ramping up log purchases. But the thing about it is all of these mills place an order to say, hey, I need this many board feet, I need this many logs, and now they've got that order, but they can't get any more because of the demands. Yeah. So it's just a domino effect of what's going on. So please don't get upset with, our manufacturers, our mills and suppliers. They're doing what they can to support us. But the Western red cedar and the pressure treated mills are dealing with all of the pre-sold products from earlier this year. So whatever's coming in later in the year, they can't even give you a time frame on delivery. It may be 6 months, it may be 9 months. We just don't know. So just take that into consideration. A couple of other points here is that cutting and supplying as fast as possible, but with such a high demand, hard to meet the expectations. And then you take the backlog that occurred with the COVID shutdown to where they could mitigate their plants and not being able to get logs to cut, that just adds more challenges on that.
Yeah, so they had the demand, plus they had back orders.
Absolutely. So the takeaway here is we know what the delivery times are.
Sure.
Hopefully we'll have some level off toward the middle of next year. Continue placing your orders, continue doing what you're doing. More and more people with this whole process begin buying truckloads rather than job lots.
Yep.
I think that's good. We've even talked at other segments, Joe, you and I even had a discussion about, co-op with some of your smaller companies in the market. If you can't buy a truckload, go with 5 or 6, companies that are like-minded, and y'all co-op an order to where you can get 2 truckloads. It works. I mean, I've seen it work. But they can't give you a deadline, a timeline on when the delivery and things are going to occur.
No, that's what we're seeing, Tony, is so we'll place an order for like 3 or 4 truckloads and they say, well, we'll get them to you when we can. But if nothing else, it gets you in line, right?
Yes.
It gets you in that queue to say, I need 4 truckloads spaced out at least a month apart. And they say, well, that's fine. It's going to be more, more than a month apart. That's fine. That's fine. I just don't need 4 trucks showing up, next week.
Exactly.
But it gets you in their queue, right? It gets you in line.
And they're not going to ship you all at one time because they're allocating. Okay.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah.
The big suppliers that we know in our industry, they have certain allocations per month. They don't get anything over what this other guy doesn't get. Well, but what caused most of this, if we remember going back to COVID, was the retail sales at the box movers. Okay. Everybody's going down and they're buying this product, right? And they're buying this product, which puts a demand, and it challenges the supply. And then all of a sudden, again, let's think about it. Okay, the box movers, we know who they are. All right, they're all over the country. They're going to get the first deliveries before the fence guys get them. Okay, and you can put names on the side of those bunks of wood all day long. You know who the 4 primary guys are out there. And if you go to the box movers, I don't want to even name them. You understand that product's there, that product's there, that's product's. I'd say a guy called me. They said, Tony, my local box mover has got, a yard full of, this product. Well, guess what? He buys more product than the fence industry does as a whole. So guess what? He got his product before us.
Well, and that's a nationwide company, right? So they have a national buyer that will go to the mill directly and say, we want 32 train car loads. And we want you to commit to that. You know what I mean? So, so it stands to reason that they're going to have a little bit higher priority. Again, as a contractor, consider it. So you have one client that meets 25% of your yearly sales, right? So this is a big customer. They need a fence, and then you have a customer that maybe comes in once or twice a year, and they need a fence, and you can only build one. Which you prioritize.
Exactly.
Right? You prioritize the relationship that you've had for years, and you also recognize that they're a decent portion of your revenue. So you prioritize that project. Right, wrong, or indifferent, that is the correct business move.
Yeah.
So
absolutely. Business is business at the end of the day, and that's what everybody's got to realize.
That's right. So
I've got some really good talking points here from a report that I received, and this is from March of this year. Okay. Here we are several months later.
Sure.
But the total North American lumber production in 2020 finished only 1% higher than 2019. Okay, so think about that in relative terms. In 2020, it only had 1% increase in the overall market from 2019. Now,
let's talk about
2019 was strong, and then we hit the COVID time, but yet it still maintained. Okay, it didn't decrease.
Exactly. That's the point. That's what the point I hear from that, Tony, is that they were shut down, depending on where they were located and all that. They were shut down for a period of time.
Yep.
And they still got over that. They still got over that hump and finished 1% higher.
Exactly.
I think that's significant.
I thought this was a very good point too, that the Canadian output was down 4% in 2020. Okay. And that's mainly due to, we don't think about it like this. I'm from Mississippi, and I see pine trees, on every street corner, right? And there's a beetle infestation that gets into these pine trees. And if the pine beetle, gets in these trees, it'll wipe out a forest, in 30 days. Well, what happened in Canada, it was called the mountain pine beetle infestation. And it absolutely destroyed their forest, which, again, if they can't get the logs to cut, the mills can't produce, the industry can't receive. So, we don't think about things like that affecting us, but it was on such a large scale. That's relevant for us to understand. So hopefully I'm giving you some things to think about. It truly is all the pieces, all the building blocks, all the dominoes that goes into that thing, has an effect on the big picture.
Well, and that's Tony, that's significant. The Canadian production being down significant because the vast majority of Western red cedar that comes in the United States comes from Canada, is my understanding.
there, and of course our Pacific Northwest, our U.S. based
Right.
Pacific Northwest supplies more Western red cedar with the Canadian market than anybody else. So U.S. base held and added 1%, but due to this infestation, the Canadian market was way down. Another couple of things I wanted to bring to the attention of the listeners was that, we as buyers, we the fence guys, get pretty frustrated in the inability to purchase enough lumber to keep things going. But at the end of the day, it all has to do with the labor shortages, okay, and raw material, logs. That's the two things that you need to keep in mind, okay? Now, it's hard to keep our current shifts fully staffed, as we've already talked about, and they can't add an additional staff or additional shift because of those two things. I don't have the labor and I don't have the raw material, okay? Yep. Now, I thought this was very, very, very specific. This is a gentleman that I know personally, okay, that basically said, Tony, I've been in this industry for 70 years. I've never seen anything like it in the wood market, okay? 70 plus years in the wood market, and he's saying, I've never seen anything like it. I don't know what to tell you. It just is what it is. Sure. And we've just got to wave the storm. Our fencing industry is one of the most resilient groups of people that, out there. We'll get through it. We'll find diversification. We'll find other methods. But at the end of the day, for a 70-year veteran that's been dealing with the wood market that says he's never seen anything like it, we're learning as an industry how to mitigate this and how to hopefully come out on the other end. Yeah. There's only one more piece that I want to add to this wood market, and then we'll get into your session of discussions and all.
Sure.
Like I talked about in the vinyl market, we also see a huge influx of imported cedar, okay? You call it what you want, all right? Sure. There's 3 products that's being introduced to the market. It's fast growth. It's fast growth on steroids, okay, to make that tree get up large enough to where they can cut it. They're putting it on the barge. They're shipping it over here. And at the end of the day, what you call, number 1, number 2, number 3 cedar, okay, which we think is the best, number 1 and number 2. I used to see some of this number 3. The wood market classifies as class A, B, and C, okay? Most of the products that's being imported to us right now are what you and I would consider a lesser than number 2, probably more of a number 3 product. So it's a class C product. And because it hasn't been in the market long enough for us to understand what is it going to do in 10 years, all I'm saying is you better not sit on that product very long, simply because you don't know what's going to happen with it, okay? Yep. The stories that I'm hearing is that there's been some failures with some of the products, not all the imported products, dealing with, what am I trying to say, blackwood or a fungus, that's developing. Yep. And then that causes a lot of challenges with the staining especially, but how do you get rid of it? But if you keep it stacked and you keep it wet, okay, it's eventually gonna have some problems. So all I'm saying to you, and these are the 4 peers in the industry that shared this with me, be careful with the imported product. Yeah, it's a fit, and all the import is trying to do is to capitalize on our shortage. Be patient. Our products are coming. Try to diversify. Use vinyl. Use composite. Use something. But just don't get yourself in a bind, because your company's on the line. Your credibility's on the line. So,
yeah, and that's a conversation we've had here, at our company, is that there are other products available, but let's please keep in mind that we offer a lifetime warranty, right? So let's think about that. A lifetime is a pretty long time, and we're dealing with a product, to your point, that hasn't been in the market very long. We don't know how it's going to react. However, we do have a product in Western Red Cedar that we know how it's going to act. We know what to look for. We know what to talk to the customer about. Hey, here's what's normal. Here's what's abnormal. Here's what's covered. Here's what's not covered. That sort of thing. So, Tony, here's again in not doing in-depth research, but from what I've heard, so the weight of an item contributes to the cost of shipping it. So what's happening with some of the import products is they're getting dried out. So they're putting them through a kiln dried, to lose the water weight so that they're not paying to transport water. But what's happening is when they get into an environment that is humid and nailed up, before that board can acclimate, those boards pop. You get into the board swelling, which is kind of counter to what the guys that build wood every day. It's kind of counter to what we're used to seeing. We're used to telling the customer, hey, this can shrink typically up to 1/8 of an inch over time. Totally normal. Don't freak out. It's just the fact of how this wood works. But so now guys are thinking, okay, so we're used to butting these boards up as tight as we can get them, knowing that they're going to shrink. But the import boards don't shrink; they expand because they're absorbing this moisture, this free moisture in the air, what we would call humidity, and they're popping off the fences. So it's if you're going to use that product, one, you have to understand that you're using a product that doesn't have a track record in our market, in our environments. And two, you have to really rethink how you install it.
Mm-hmm.
If we would have to create a process that says, hey, maybe you have to gap these things 1/8 of an inch to allow for swelling or more. I don't know, but these are what I'm hearing, either in email sent to me or comments in various videos, is that, the import product comes in incredibly dry, and when it acclimates, it swells.
Yeah. And then with your point there, if you use a product that this is gonna occur, that adds labor time because they've got to put that little bit of gap in there. So now you're less efficient and your prices have got to go up on your labor. So again, prices are going out the ceiling.
Yeah, less panels installed, per hour or per day, however you want to track it.
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately, it leads to a more expensive product anyway. So the money that you might have saved on the product likely gets paid back in some portion into labor. So
exactly.
Tony,
man, I see some good comments over here. These guys are flowing up over there.
I do too. One talking point I want to get into before we get to the comments is the fact that, so when we're talking about, you had said second to third quarter 2022, which let's understand that's a year from now, right?
Yeah.
So I think one of the contributing factors is you see these wholesalers stocking up on lumber. You see it, and they're buying it as fast as they can at whatever price they can get it at, right? So, and they're committing to, 32 train cars at X dollars per board to lock in price. The thing to consider is they've locked that price in, right? So
early this year, that's why they're getting product.
Sure. But the point I'm making here is, so say, fictitious numbers. Say they said, I'm going to pay $7 a board for the next 32 train cars, $7 a board. Well, those boards are going to keep coming at $7 per board. So you see comments and you hear people say, well, I don't understand why the price is so high at the box store. They've got these things piled up. Well, that's because they paid a certain price for it.
So
right?
let me interject input from my 4 experts. Okay. Yeah. They may have locked in that price at the first of the year, but due to all of the parameters that's going on right now, they're not buying that board at the same price. They're basically, it's not happening, Joe.
No, I don't. No,
in other words, let's just hypothetically say a big box mover committed to 300, railroad truck, a railroad, cargo, and they contracted for $7. We'll hypothetically say that number. That is hypothetical, people. Okay.
Yes.
And now, as early in the year, they probably held to that contract, but now due to everything else that's going on, that may be $2 more, $3 more. And then you add all the shipping issue on top of that, we're going to talk about momentarily. So a lot of people think that because they're stockpiling this stuff, they're still buying it at the same price. They aren't. It had to change. It had to change because they can't even produce the product for that cost. And whether a contract's in place or not, and this is every segment of our market. Every peer that I talked to said that the guaranteed price is early. Their slot, their locked in order is there, but the price is not locked in. It's changing every time. It could change this month to when they ship 30 cars next month. It may change, and then 30 days later it'll change again.
Sure. No, and so the point I was making though is when they buy a board, they lock their price in when they bought whatever price they bought that at, right? So my point was that moving forward, the prices can't come down until that inventory is sold, right? Irregardless, if they have a magical lot that's filled with lumber that they paid whatever $7 a board, fictitious number for, they can't sell that board for less until they sell this lot of lumber out, right? And again, just putting it back onto the contractor's perspective, we're sitting on a couple loads of lumber right now. If the price of wood dropped to half tomorrow, I couldn't sell these boards for half. My cost is locked in on these boards. I'm going to have to sell them for what they, I have my number, right? My markup and my retail price.
Your margin, right.
I have to sell it for that retail price until I reorder, and then I can drop the price. Right. And I think that's going to contribute to how quickly the prices fall, because there's several steps in the process, right? Like, contractors don't buy directly from the mill. There's at least one step in between. There's usually two steps in between.
Exactly.
So you have to wait for the price to fall in each step before you can start realizing it on your end. And I say that because I know where this conversation is going, 6 months from now, a year from now, saying, now, wait a minute. The mills are producing cheap lumber again, or I don't think we'll ever see cheap lumber, but less expensive lumber. Why am I still getting charged this price?
Yeah.
You're going to have to wait for that price to flow through that supply chain before it gets to you. That's really the only point I was trying to make.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Because I know it's one of those things, like, I see both sides of the coin, the contractor, and I see a little bit on not really your perspective, but someone that's reporting on, just industry topics. So you kind of see both points, where me as a business owner, I say, I want a decrease in price and I want it now. But then you also have to consider, like, well, yeah, but please keep in mind, these people are running a business too.
Yeah.
So, excuse me, if I'm a wholesaler, I have to sell through my inventory at whatever price I paid for it before I can move on to a new price point. Sorry, I got a little bit dry-throated on that one.
Hey, you're good. You're good. But, hey, you're drinking out of that plastic cup over there.
I know it. Plastic everything. You know what I mean? It's all plastic. Well, Tony, I think that wraps up pretty well the subject of wood. Do you have anything else you'd like to add to it?
No, I think that's the high points. Again, we know what the delivery times are. We kind of know what, hopefully, the level off time frames will be. Hopefully sooner than that. Yeah. But it all has to do with the raw material being logs to get to the mills, and then the labor shortages, and then we add the transportation, which we'll talk about shortly. So,
one more point I just kind of had it off the top of my head. So talking about, because I see it in the comments, and we might as well bring it up about mills that were shut down, in 2019, pre-pandemic. They were shut down ahead of the pandemic. Well, why don't we just start those mills back up? One of the problems we're having on the install side of my business is we're trying to add crews, right? We're trying to add manpower. The labor force isn't there for that. Like, it just isn't. And you can talk about whatever contributing factor you want to, whether it's whatever you think the contributing factor is. I'm talking about the end result being the labor force isn't there. Not right now.
Right.
So
go up all the way.
That's the thing is, okay, so if I can't start a crew of 4 people, what are the chances I can start a sawmill that requires however many, a couple hundred people?
Right.
Probably not good, right? And, does it stink that those sawmills were shut down? Absolutely does.
And I do want to take up a little bit for, some of those guys that bought some of those mills. Acquisitions go on every day. We see it and hear about it. We read it in all type of news media. But at the end of the day, a lot of those mills were old and couldn't meet the production levels that needed to be met. Yeah. So when the new acquisition came in and says, okay, can I keep up this level of production? Well, first of all, they're challenged with getting logs. Even back in 2019, there was still a challenge then. Yep. We heard the infestation issue in Canada, which proves that point even more. And then, it was going to cost too much to ramp up that mill to a standard that could meet the production levels needed. And then pandemic hit. And then we're not even going to consider it. Okay. Right. So do I see potentially new mills, evolving. It all has to do with raw material. Can I get logs? If I can get logs, I can put mills online. If I don't have logs, I can't put mills online, whether they're already in place or whether I need to do a startup. Even if these mills were started up today, guys, I want this point to be made. If I had 5 more mills, if we as an industry had 5 more mills right now, you wouldn't be getting any more product because there's so many trees out there. Okay.
Yeah.
So the delivery on the trees is the issue. So whether we had 5, 6, or even 10 more mills, you wouldn't ramp up any more production because it's a limited resource of raw material being
right. It's a supply issue, both in raw material and labor is a supply also.
Yeah.
So you're going to have labor issues. I saw that, but I think that's relevant to talk about. I really do.
Absolutely. Very good point. Very good point.
Listen, I was one of the fence guys in 19 going, oh, okay, so you shut down however many, 2, 3, 4 mills, and the price of your boards went up. Those two things seem related, but it all depends on perspective. If you look at the flip side of the coin, they're saying, okay, yes, we acquired 10 mills, we closed down the 2, 3, 4, lowest producing or negative producing mills to try to help our efficiencies over the rest of the mills.
Absolutely. It goes back to that margin thing you were talking about earlier. At the end of the day, every business has got to make a dollar. We got to figure it out.
You look at a profit and loss statement. Where am I making money? Where am I losing money? Absolutely. And let's try to cut out that money loss.
Yep.
Well, Tony, I think that wraps up our wood segment, I do believe. Great. Very good.
Man, we got some good comments over here. I'm excited.
I'm ready for this. I am ready. I've been watching it the whole time. I'm like, yep. All right. So let me scroll up because there's been a few here. So we answered this question. This is one of the first questions I saw pop up. So Jason, great question. So many mills have shut down. Will they reopen? I think we answered it right, but it's a supply issue. It's going to be. If I can't add a 4-person crew, what are the chances we can open up? And I don't know how many people commercial sawmill employs, but it's got to be a couple hundred, you'd think. So I'd say chances of them reopening, if they could reopen, also let's have this conversation. So let's wave a magic wand and say your log supply issues are over, your labor supply issues are over. You have all the logs and all the labor you could ever want. I think you'd be looking at 6 months to a year before that sawmill becomes efficient at creating. If we're talking about 1x6x6 Western Red Cedar boards, I don't think you would see the results. Again, waving a magic wand that doesn't exist. Yes. I still think I don't think you would feel that right away anyway.
Exactly. I think you're spot on.
All right. So Cannon's got a question or comment. Western Red Cedars seem to drop off here. We have Chinese, Japanese, El Dorado. Not sure any of those are true cedar. Halco bought Alta, and then Alta disappeared even from Halco. So there's a couple different things in there, right? So we talked about import a little bit. In my market, JPC is pretty common. Japanese something cedar. In a 2x4, it performs fairly well, but the pickets have issues, and whether we're talking about any of them, Cannon nailed it. Chinese, Japanese, El Dorado. So El Dorado, El Dorado that I am familiar with is a board produced by Sierra Pacific. So it's what they call an incense cedar. So I think that's, Tony, what you were talking about, whitewood maybe, incense.
Yeah.
It's a really blonde board. They call one of theirs an El Dorado. So I wonder if that's what that is.
Maybe.
We use that board. We used the Sierra Pacific board for a while. Had issues with my personal experience. One person's experience is it had issues with splitting, and we were getting a lot of callbacks for splits. And actually, for the opposite reason I was saying, so a lot of these, if you put up a kiln dried board in a humid environment, it will swell and bust or pop. These boards came in really wet because they were milled in a really wet environment, and our environment is drier than theirs. So it dried these boards out pretty quick.
That's also where your mildew and your blackboard stuff, is coming from. So again, be careful with those products for sure. I'd like to make a point here that Cannon's got about, Halco bought Alta and then Alta disappeared. Alta hasn't disappeared. It's just that the pre-orders from the big box movers took precedence. Again, it's that pecking order, Cannon. So even Halco owning the company is going to look at, or Atuchu owning the company is going to look at profit margins. And if the box mover says, I want 300 rail cars, the fence industry says, I want 30 rail cars, we're low on the pecking order. So those box movers are going to get that product ahead of the suppliers, even though they may be part of the same conglomerate. I mean, it's all about the profit margins, again, that Joe mentioned earlier.
So I'll say this, Tony, and this is just one conversation with someone at Master Halco was because we were talking about this because I was like, hey, what is going on here? The same company that owns you owns Alta. Like, can you all not play nicely together? Like, you would think that this could work. And he had that point. He's like, listen, they're filling outstanding orders first. Yep. But the interesting thing he told me, and I don't have any way of confirming it, but what he had said is moving forward on orders is going to be 4-to-1. 4 to Master Halco, 1 to a box store. And if we're talking about rail car loads or whatever, it's 4-to-1. So on new orders. But you got to get through the old orders first. And again, that's a phone conversation with just somebody at Master Halco. If that's true, it's true. If not, it's not. But
time will tell. We'll leave that open ended. How about that?
Exactly. Radius Tulsa has this to say. I've heard that many mills on the West Coast Northwest are sitting on millions of board feet of material, and it seems the shortage is manufactured.
My comment to that is you're right. There's a lot of board feet sitting in mills and yard lots ready to ship. It's not a shortage that's being manufactured. It's due to labor and transportation. And Radius Tulsa, if y'all hold that thought for just a minute, we'll cover that momentarily.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're gonna be talking about transportation here in just a little bit, and I think that's probably what you're seeing there is that. Here's the thing that I want to impress on everyone is if I'm a mill, I get paid when those boards hit wherever they're going, right? And so it is in my best interest to get these boards on the ground so I can get paid. I have ongoing expenses. I've got labor. I've got to keep the lights on. I got to pay insurance. Like I need to keep getting paid. So I'm putting boards on the ground as quickly as I can, but how quickly can you do it? We're going to get into that here in a little bit with labor and transportation, but I think your point's right. Like they've got it. It's a matter of getting it on site now. Kentucky Raymond says, good thing for us that happened with the wood shortage. It introduced us to one inch thick picket because that was all we could get. I recommend them every time now, if available, of course. I think this gets into higher margin materials being produced. Right, a 1 inch picket probably has a higher margin. They charge more for it than a 5/8 picket or whatever you want to call it. 1 inch pickets are nice. They really are.
I grew up installing those 1 inch boards, and then it just slowly but surely over time is just shrunk.
Well, that's the thing is when you're holding a 5/8 board, you're like, wait a minute. This is not a 1x6x6. This is a 5/8 by 6x6.
Yeah.
Like, well, but it's nominal. It's a 1 inch nominal board. Like
it is what it is.
Listen, like let's call it what it is. It's a 5.
It's good. It's good that he can get that product though. I mean, most areas of the country you can't even get your hands on the product. So if there's a mill out there producing that, and he's got a direct chain of supply. Man, good for you. Kudos.
Like I said, I have a feeling it's a margin issue. They probably make better margin on a 1 inch picket than they do a 5/8 maybe.
Yep.
So
Yep.
Very good. Wedgwood says a 4x4x8 foot pressure treated pine is currently around 22. Keep in mind they're in the UK, 22 UK, which is roughly $31 US. No grade. They're just rough sawn pine. $31 a 4x4x8. That is incredible. Now keep in mind with the UK, they've got higher transportation costs too, right? It's got to get on a boat to get to the UK. Unless it's produced.
And I'm not going to talk a lot about price or at all about price because I'm not going to cross that antitrust line.
Yeah.
We can talk in generalities, but when it comes down to reality, you know where I got to be on that.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. All right, Jared Root says, finished by Jared LLC out of Northwest Arkansas. Hello, Jared. You're in my neck of the woods. We're over in Southwest Missouri, so we're not too far apart.
There you go.
Landmark has an excellent point. I saw this one come through. Landmark Creation says, off topic, but the AFA member packet was over the top this year. Proud to be a member. Well, Landmark, I'll correct you. It wasn't a packet. It was a box. Like they sent a member box over. It was so I saw Tony's video. Tony, I saw your video where you were boxing them up. You said, "Hey, here's what's coming." Holy cow! Like this is like a treasure chest coming my way.
Hey, look, our friend Sean hit the nail on the head right after he got his. Just that mem stick alone, which is probably one of the smallest pieces that's in that box, is probably the most valuable thing that's in there with all the content of all the packets, all of the, employee manuals, safety manuals, everything that helps your company grow and be better. That's probably the most valuable piece in that whole box. But you know what? I got more comments on anything else.
What's that?
Nice red hat. I mean, everybody's like, man, I love I tell them, fly the color, man, fly the color.
Well, and
Thank you for that comment.
I do like the color red because it's a cousin to orange. So
it's close. It's close. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right. Alan McIntosh says, the thing I can't stand is give me a lead time and give me a price. The suppliers and manufacturers raise prices of products to try and help control the supply and what they need to produce, and the industry still shows it wants to pay that amount. But they can't figure out how to pay more for workers to get the people out of the house into the factories. It's bull that I can't stomach. Bidding on, say, a federal contract is 30 days from being awarded, and 60 days from then I'll be, and it cut it off.
Yeah,
I think we know kind of where that's going. We see it in the Facebook groups a lot. I agree. Like I said, the labor force isn't there, whether we're talking about installed or factory or whatever, and for whatever reason, there's not a labor force that's coming to work right now.
And here's a couple of points I saw out of that comment, Joe, was first and foremost, the consumer is paying the higher prices and not even asking a question.
Yeah.
I mean, 2 years ago, if you had quoted, a certain price for that particular project to a consumer, that had said, "Are you crazy?" But they're not even questioning it now. They're saying, "When can you get it and when can you install it?" Okay. So to Alan's point, though, it is a bit aggravation. And I talked to several suppliers, okay, wholesalers, and the masters, the merchants, the Stevens Pipe, the Benfords, all of those guys out, security contractors, all of those guys, they are at the mercy of the manufacturer, the primary producer that has these price changes going on every day. And I'd be willing to bet that no matter what the wholesaler is doing right now, they'll say, hey, this price is good for 48 hours. End of story. So to Alan's point, it's hard for him to quote a job and then go back and support that. And even to the point where I'm telling everybody that asks me this question, you need to have the same time frame in your quote that your supplier is telling you if you're buying job lot. Okay. Now, if you have control of your inventory and you got a truckload of product back there, you're in better control of that. Sure. But you better be putting in your quote. This is only good for 48 hours or 72 hours, or how long you can do it. Right. Because, and even a government contract, I've seen people pulling out of these federal contracts because they're wanting you to guarantee. And if you're a smart businessman, you're going to say government, federal, heck with you. I can't guarantee that because you're causing most of the problem.
Yeah. Fair point. Yeah. What we typically say is I'll guarantee what I can control.
Exactly.
Like if it is within my control, I will guarantee that for you. However, I do not manufacture the product you're looking for. Therefore, I have no control over it. You know, and what a lot of contractors have in their contracts is a force majeure clause, right? That says if something crazy happens, I'm not on the hook for it. You have to, because again, if I can't control it, I'm not going to be held responsible for it.
Exactly.
So, but Alan, I mean, that's the thing is, in your comment is a lot of the frustration that's going on industry wide. If
top to bottom, from manufacturing to producing, manufacturing, wholesaler, supplier to contractor. It's all a domino. So I get it. I fully understand it. I certainly respect the comment. And every other contractor's dealing with the same thing, Alan. So hopefully we'll find some level of getting over this thing.
Yeah, it's a real problem, Alan. It is. And your comment is a pretty good indication of what a lot of guys are going through. So I appreciate the comment for sure. Heritage Fence Company says, we were forced this year to take Suji cedar because we can't get Western red cedar, but we tell all our clients so they are informed. Our competition is using the same material but saying cedar.
Good for you with Heritage. You're doing the right thing. Keep doing the right thing, staying above board.
No one has ever complained about having too much education on a subject. You know, whether it is you, the contractor, whether it's your client, the more education you can provide your clients, the better you'll be for it. You know, absolutely. Heritage Zen says goes a long way with being upfront with our clients.
There you go. Absolutely.
I would rather lose a contract by being upfront, honest, and providing laying all the cards on the table. I would rather lose it than try to get that contract by not sharing information. Because, I mean, here's the thing is frustration is the result of unmet expectations.
That's right.
So if you withhold information or if you don't make something clear or you omit one little detail because you know it's going to be an issue, that leads to frustration on the back end, right? Because this customer has an expectation. And if you don't meet it, now you've got frustration to deal with. You know, so laying all the cards on the table, being upfront, providing education is always the best policy.
Yep.
Even if it leads to losing a sale, I would rather lose that sale because rather than deal with the frustration on the back end. Radius Salsa says, cupping and checking is prominent in imported cedars. We've used different types of import over the past year, and the different mills from overseas have unique characteristics. I think that's the point, is that when you're using a product, I don't care what product it is, when you're using a product that doesn't have a track record in our country or in your environment, whatever, you're kind of playing Russian roulette with it to a certain extent that you just don't know how it's going to react. So this is an interesting question from Stephen Albert. Did anyone check what's going on with Georgia Pacific and major logging companies? So, I mean, I would have to think that they're dealing with the same issues that we're going to talk about here in a little bit, labor and transportation. It's
that all wood market that we talked about earlier. You know, they're producing to meet the residential home building industry piece of it, and they're not thinking about anything else. I mean, I got good friends that work for Georgia Pacific in the state of Mississippi, and I talk to them quite often. You know, they've never really ventured into the Western red cedar market or some of these other things because it just doesn't provide them enough margin. You know, so that point, Weyerhaeuser being another, you know, major log company. Again, those are the big boys that are supplying your residential home building market for sure.
Yep, agreed. Stephen goes on to say, grow bamboo.
There's some good composite bamboo product out there. You guys need to look at it.
It's going to take a fair amount of bamboo to make a 1x6.6 picket, though. It's going to take quite a bit, but it's fast growing, and I don't know. We'll see. The thing with bamboo is it's also an invasive species too, so you want to be careful with that. It'll take over your neighbor's lawn before you know it. Ask me how I know, because my parents had a neighbor that had bamboo, and then within a year, my parents had bamboo because the shoots start underground and then they pop up.
Yep.
So you almost have to make just a concrete trench around your yard to keep it out.
That's about right.
Cannon Johnson says, does it not seem like some suppliers have let us down? Some have product while others do not. I see many fence contractors adding supply to their lineup and bypassing the two-step distribution process. So, I mean, I understand Cannon's frustration. I mean, I own a fence company. You're right, Cannon. I mean, it absolutely seems like it's you got to know who has what at what time, right? So we're no longer in the game of I'm a one one wholesaler company. You know, we don't just deal with merchants or Master or Stevens or whoever.
Yeah.
We got to buy from all of them because one of them will have fittings and one of them will have wire and one of them will have post and tube. And then a week will go by and now one of them has tube and one of them has fittings and one of them has chain link. And then another one, you know, you got to kind of play with all of them, right?
You know, Kenneth's first sentence there is, you know, it may look like that from the outside, you know, that suppliers are letting us down. But from the inside, you know, some of the topics that we've been talking about is their challenge, which relates to the contractor challenge. So what they can and can't get is all based on pre-orders and production and raw material delivery content and those type things. So, you know, don't get too down on them, Cannon. You know, they're doing the best that they can, just like we as contractors are doing the best that we can. And I know that it all goes, you know, it's all a domino. I keep using that term, but it truly is. We're all in this thing together. So keep fighting the good fight, brother.
Yeah, I'll make this point, and it's not about one wholesaler in general. You know, nope. I see this with a lot of them, but my perspective is for several of the wholesalers, customer service has gone down pretty significantly because
you may tell you why
they're stressed like everybody else.
You may tell you why. I'm gonna give you specifics.
Yes,
okay,
sir.
I'm gonna go back to Alan's comment earlier. Okay, so Alan gets a quote from Mr. Wholesaler. Mr. Wholesale says, "Hey, this is good for 48 hours, and here's your complete package. Maybe it's 1,000 foot, 3,000, 5,000 foot of wood or chain link or whatever." Okay. So Alan submits that proposal to the customer. The customer sets on it, the contractor, the prime general contractor sets on it for a week or two. And then all of a sudden he comes back to Alan and says, "Hey, I want to do this project." Alan says, "Whoa, I can't stand by that price. Prices have changed 4 times since that time. Let me go back to my supplier and get a quote." So all of a sudden there's 1,000 Allens, 1,000 Cannons, 1,000 Tonys calling their supplier to say, "Hey, can you update this quote? Can you update this quote?" I talked to a good friend of mine that works at a wholesaler this week, and he said in one day he updated 90 quotes. Okay, so to your point, Joe, customer service may be lacking, but we're causing that customer service problem when we're calling back and asking for those updates so much. But we don't have a choice, right? If we're going to try to do it. So again, we're all in it together, but that's an exact example of why we feel like maybe some suppliers have let us down or some suppliers are not as customer focused anymore. Yeah. It's not their fault, guy. Be patient with them, please.
Yeah, you know, because here's the thing. So this conversation went on a lot in Nebraska that there's some wholesalers that kind of have the take it or leave it, you know, mentality. Like, listen, this is what I can do. This is what I can do it for. Take it or leave it, you know, and I understand that's not the best customer service answer, right? Yeah. But it is kind of the answer, right? And you know, to your point, like these people are you know, they got 90. You know, that guy had 90 quotes he updated that day, and you know, I'm sure if I sat in that seat, I might have that attitude too. That, hey, listen, I get it. You're frustrated. I'm frustrated. It's not a great situation. Yeah. If you don't yell at me about it, because after this phone call, I got to make 25 more.
Exactly.
So it's like, you know, it is what it is. And like I say, I sit in 2 different seats here, right? So I sit in the seat where I talk to, you know, my sister Sarah that runs her residential, and she's saying the same thing. She's like, I can't get good answers from anybody. And she's frustrated and all that. I'm like, well, yeah, but then I talk with you and I talk with folks at the major wholesalers, you know, in this seat, and you hear frustration on their end. They're like, yeah, no kidding. I wish I could get material. I wish I could provide it in a timely fashion. I wish I could hire 20 more people so that we can be more on top of getting deliveries out there and getting them right. You know, guys, this conversation is going to sound really similar when we talk about a lot of different aspects of the industry. You know, we're going to talk about labor here in a minute, and I think a large part of this pain revolves around labor and the shortage of labor. All right, Kenny Dugan says, from a past builder to a current stainer, the shortage has boosted our market. We are seeing similar issues arise with oils, chemicals, etc. But in a way, our industry has been benefiting from it.
That's a good comment.
Yeah, I agree, Kenny. I mean, the cleaning and preservation has never been more important. It's with the price of replacement being so high. I mean, my granddad used to always say the best way to have nice things is to keep your things nice.
Yeah.
The best way to have a nice fence is to keep that thing clean and stain it every couple of years, and then you don't have to replace it as often. But agreed, absolutely. Alan says this is 2021. If they wanted to, they could figure out how to have a website that is constantly updated so a decent amount of us could look at ourselves and figure it out. There are some that do.
Yep.
We deal with a company called Fence Brokers. They're a smaller wholesaler out of Arkansas. Yeah, but they have a website that's updated with current pricing and inventory. So some do. It just depends where you are and who you're dealing with. Here's the thing, though. Think about this. For Fence Brokers, it's probably easier to do that when you have a few locations and, a smaller inventory. Someone like, a master merchant, Stevens, who has a ton of locations and a ton of inventory is probably going to be harder / incredibly more expensive to try to roll that software out to them. But that would be just my thoughts on it. Joshua Glover says, we are a victim of our own circumstance. Fence contractors who didn't typically, we lost Tony. Fence contractors who didn't typically stock a lot of materials started to stock as much as they could so that we have better control over prices and availability for our customers. In a nutshell, we're causing some, if not a lot, of the problems suppliers are having to keep up with demand. Josh, I think this is a great comment. Yeah, absolutely. I agree. So, again, just me and my experience, that's what we've been doing. Typically, we would just have one truckload of material on hand. We're sitting on just picket. And, when we're talking about wood pickets, we typically sit on one truckload at a time. Right now, we're sitting on 2, and I've got another one on order so that we can have material ready to go. So, Tony, welcome back.
Yeah, Josh, I lost the connection on you. Technology.
That's right.
I saw Josh's point there, and he hit the nail on the head. We caused a lot of this, we as an industry, and then you do the same thing with the, construction industry for residential homes and all the other pieces. We did it all. It's kind of like the where did we find toilet paper, back when? I mean, we caused it ourselves. So I think we need to run our businesses more efficiently and plan more efficiently and more effectively. We can't mitigate all of these pieces, but if we looked at ourselves a little bit more, rather than trying to be a job lot, more of a inventory type group, we'd probably be better off. But very good point Josh made there.
Absolutely. I think this is a large portion of what's going on is you see not only fencing contractors, but you see box stores doing the same thing. Box stores are stacking right now. Several of our box stores of different brands and varieties, are all stocking lumber to the sky. Because they placed these orders a year ago, and now they're getting all of it in. So that's causing part of the problem too.
Exactly.
I'm afraid who gets hit by this the worst are the guys that are just starting out.
Absolutely.
Guys that start out in the last couple of years that don't have whatever the number is, don't have $250,000 to place a massive inventory order to stock all of what they need. It's just not possible.
Case in point, I get a call or two a week on new startups, what we call tier 1 as an AFA member, less than $1 million in sales. And basically they're saying, man, I can't even buy from Mr. Supplier because they're not taking on any new customers. They're only trying to support their existing. And it's because, the more people they add, the less capability they're going to have. So that's the first thing that I've ever seen as a 40-year veteran of this industry of suppliers turning away business. Not all of them, just a couple of them. There's some that's been doing it for years if you don't hit a certain threshold. But that in itself, to your point, I have one guy that I talked to said, Tony, if I can't get product by this time, I have to close my doors. Now that's pretty strong. Thank goodness he got product. Thank goodness he was able to recoup. But I also told him, I said, the reason is that you're not diversified enough. You're only installing wood. You're only installing vinyl. You got to start installing chain link. You got to, this. If you got to dig a ditch, fill it up, do landscaping or cut grass this week, you're in the fence business. You're in a business trying to make money. Yeah. You got to go do these things. So diversify is what I tell every fence company.
Yeah. Well, and to Cannon made a point earlier when he said, he said, I see many fence contractors adding supply to their lineup and bypassing two-step distribution process. It's something we do. We sell retail here out of the lot because we have access to larger quantities, and we don't need it all right now. So we're selling to a lot of the guys that are just starting out now. So the other part of that conversation is, they don't know. The comment I hear is that's not fair because they're buying from their competition, right? That I'm selling to them and I'm trying to install to their customers. I get it, but I don't know that there's a way around that.
Business is business.
Yeah, there isn't.
That guy has a choice whether he wants to buy his supplies from you or somebody else. At the end of the day, I mean, Jeffco Fence Company in Pearl, Mississippi, I grew up. I mean, we supplied to those guys that couldn't buy from the wholesaler because they didn't have the credit, they didn't have the ability. And Mr. Jeffco actually helped those guys get to the point where they could get the credit to buy from the supplier. So it was a win-win for everybody. So I get it. And like you said, it's a choice. It's a choice.
That's right. And that's the thing is if I had to choose, I would choose the install side anyway. So, we're offering retail to try to offer a solution to guys and gals that might not have that available.
Yep.
Let's see. A couple more of these and we're going to move on. Alan says they put themselves in that position by making people – okay, so they're talking about wholesalers with – not wrong. By making them call – making 200 people call a day. Agreed. But again, view the coin from the other side. Also, they can't issue 30-day quotes anymore either. That's not available either. So I understand. Like, it's frustrating for everyone. I think if that's the one thing people take away from today, I think we'll all be better for it. That there's not a good solution. All right. Tony, is wood staining restoration certification is something that AFA is looking into, considering the current state of the industry?
Absolutely. That's my statement. Absolutely. We're always looking at adding additional certifications to Accreditation Certification Institute, adding additional education and training to our lineup. That's what our members are demanding right now. These on the roads are proving that. And I can share with this group that's listening in that my goal this next year as executive director is to do about 4 to 6 on the road events plus AFA University. So you're going to see a lot of road time put on some vehicles and some trailers next year, even with blowouts. I put new tires on the trailer the other day. If y'all saw that blowout I had, we're ramping up. We're ready. So, but to Kenny's point, yes, we're always looking to expand our education process and add certification to that as well. How that looks, I can't tell you.
Sure,
we're working on it for sure.
But it's good to know that it's on the roadmap.
Yeah,
it's coming at some point.
Yep.
All right, last one. Josh says, on the flip side of that, when prices start to drop, those that have increased inventory will stop buying it, causing an increase in supply over demand, which will likely cause the prices to drop rapidly once they start. No one wants to be stuck holding the bag. That's probably a fair point too. Once things start going the other way, they might start going the other way pretty quickly.
Yeah, and that could be a good thing for us, but you better be running your business.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is, like I said, any material I have on my lot, we're going to sell it for the retail price so long as we have it. I paid what I paid for it. So, all right, guys, we're going to move right along. We're only on point 3, so we're probably going to start moving through these. We're probably going to start limiting the question and answer part because I'll spend the whole time there, and we got a lot of good content to get to. So,
and we're always available after the fact.
That's right. That's absolutely right. All right, Tony. So talking about state of the industry, let's talk a little bit about ornamental iron, ornamental fencing in general. Iron, steel, aluminum. Iron is steel, I guess. Ornamental steel and ornamental aluminum. What do you have in your report as
Absolutely.
far as?
So to your point, we've almost gone 2 hours here. I'm going to try to hit the high points, hit the bullet points, and then we'll get right through it. But
Sure.
My peers in the industry is telling me we're still seeing a 12 to 16 week delivery for most products with the ornamental and for the aluminum. Okay, excuse me, for the steel and for the aluminum. The reason for steel is, again, we're kind of down on the totem pole, being vehicle manufacturers and structural for buildings to be constructed, infrastructure, way up on the totem pole. They're getting the product, they're getting the necessary needs, and then us fence guys, the manufacturers that do it, they're low on the totem pole to get the product to be able to do what they need to do. So most suppliers ordered early are being supported. They're locked in. Prices are changing. The delivery dates are changing, but they will be getting product. So basically, if you didn't lock it in, you're basically out of luck, and the prices are completely unknown. Mentioned about the steel market being vehicle and structural are at a high demand right now. I mean, y'all seen all the ads on vehicles that's sitting in, open fields waiting for a microchip or waiting for this or waiting for that. The demand on manufacturing has never slowed down. It's even more so because interest rates are cheap. And heck, you can buy a vehicle these days with zero interest. So that's a big issue there. So the demand is up, no product, but prices are up as well. That's the challenge. Expect delays when transport, which we're going to talk here shortly. And the piece that I got from my peers in the industry was that the level off will hopefully happen by mid-year 2022. So we're a year away. So expect what you have right now. Expect limited delivery, extended delivery times. Expect, price increases. And as things start slowing down and changing, hopefully we'll see that happening. But that's the high points. That's the big ticket pieces. And we don't need to talk about the labor and the transportation piece because we're going to hit that completely on a different stop or a different time here. So, and again, I want you guys to say, understand that if you're buying from XYZ manufacturer or ABC manufacturer, this guy may be delivering to you in 4 to 6 weeks. This guy may be delivering to you, in 16 to 20 weeks. So that averages that 12 to 14 week time frame. And that's what I got from all of my guys that I talked to.
Sure.
Because, I got relationships with every manufacturer out there. And by talking to them, they give me this input. So again, this is not Tony. I'm not an economist. So, I'm just passing on I'm the messenger, so to speak.
Sure. So, Tony, I think one thing we're going to keep saying over and over is it's going to be a supply issue, right? So whether we've already talked about vinyl, we've already talked about wood, a lot of this is going to come down to a supply issue, whether it is the raw material supply, the labor supply, it's going to come down to a supply issue. One thing that's kind of wild to me is that in the ornamental market is kind of unique to the ornamental market is they're pricing it as of delivery, right?
Yes.
So they'll say, this is today's price, but we're 12 weeks out. We'll let you know what the price is when it ships.
Exactly.
That's wild.
Yes. And you're going to see the same thing in large shipments of chain link and tubing that we're going to talk about here momentarily. Yeah. That's happening in that particular market as well.
Yeah. It seemed, just one guy's perspective, it seemed to start in the ornamental. It seemed to start there where they're like, hey, it's whatever it is, $1 million a panel right now, but in 12 weeks it might be $2 million. I don't know. I'll let you know.
Exactly. And you have your choice of saying, hey, I'll take the order or I don't.
Well, that's the thing, is because they're in the position of saying, I've got 100 guys that want this. If you don't want it, I'll call the next guy on the list and I'll ship it to him and he'll thank me for it. So it's kind of that type of situation at the moment. Unfortunately for the contractors.
Yeah, unfortunately for us. Yep.
One thing I've been seeing just on the contractor side ordering is that the commons or the more commons, the 4-foot flat top 3-rail, for us, that's kind of our main thing we order. Yeah. That's going to be like your 4 to 6 week, But we just had a project that's a 5-foot 2-rail, to meet some spec, and it's municipal grade and all this other. it was a very specific specification. That was something like 16 weeks to get it in. So to your point,
out of the norm, right?
Yeah. Yeah, but that illustrates your point of, you've got to average those two. I can get one in 4 weeks, I can get one in 16 weeks. So when you're talking about lead times, you're talking about the average between custom orders, stock orders,
different manufacturers.
Right. That's a good point too. That one manufacturer might just be cranking out 4-foot smooth top, and they're doing it very efficiently, and another manufacturer might be focusing on something entirely different.
Yep.
Their manufacturing process might be different altogether. But yeah, so ornamental right now is crazy. What I'm seeing is, it seems like shortages in one type of fence push the market into another type of fence. And really what it's doing is it's pushing this problem kind of from one sector to another, whether it's vinyl that pushes it into wood or an ornamental shortage or ornamental problems that push into chain link. It seems like these are all just going round robin.
Yeah.
Well, good deal, Tony. So ornamental, so basically, again, supply issue, right? And so this bears discussion too. We talked about this a little bit ago in vinyl, that it's also going to be, black's going to be your primary color. You can get any, Henry Ford, you can get any color you want as long as it's black. So if you want bronze, either it's not happening, or you can count on it being an incredible lead time right now. Well, depending on the manufacturer, I guess.
I think also depends on the manufacturer, and we're talking about ornamental as a whole, which is both steel and aluminum.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of us see more color-focused products in the aluminum market than we do in the steel market. So again, depending on those lineups of how that. But again, if it's a custom color, forget it. Maybe by the middle of next year. So just know I said this back when the pandemic hit. You better have a good understanding with your manufacturer, your supplier, and you better have a good open communication, because if you're not, then you're going to get way behind. And that's what's happened to a lot of our contractors.
Agreed. Yeah, they're getting stuck. They really are.
Yep.
So it sounds like the highlights for ornamental are, again, like I said, supply issue, and look for it to come somewhat back to normal, or the new normal, in about a year, about 12 months.
Exactly. And hopefully and pray it happens before then.
Right.
That's projections of, my peers in the industry saying that that's kind of where she's going to be.
Well, and yeah, that's the thing. I mean, understand, nobody's got the crystal ball.
Nope.
Nobody knows, what's coming down the railroad tracks 6 months from now.
Nope.
So as of June of 2021, that's kind of the industry's thought, is about 12 months. We've got about 12 months left of recovery.
Yep.
Very good. Very good. Yep. Tony, as always, thank you, sir, for your industry update for ornamental fencing.
Yep.
All right, guys, we got through that. Very good. Very good. And it looks like we're caught up on comments. So we're going to roll. This is one that I think is, well, I mean, these are all interesting, right? But chain link and pipe, I think, is going to be I think that's going to be what a lot of guys in here and gals are interested in hearing about. So we'll roll right into it.
I tell everybody, you may not be a fence man if you don't know what chain link is, kind of like, the comedian that, forgot his total mind blank right now. But, if you're not in the fence business, you don't know what chain link is, you're not a fence man. But you may not do it or want to do it. But
think about it. So the commercial industry is predominantly chain link.
Mm-hmm.
Residential, you've got chain link, vinyl, wood, ornamental. Commercial's got chain link.
Yep.
Little bit of ornamental, maybe a little bit of wood, predominantly chain link.
Absolutely.
Chain link. Yep. So you want to talk about a big segment of the industry. I think, I think if you were to wave a magic wand and see what every sector's sales were, I think you'd see chain link has a lion's share of the fence industry sales.
Exactly. And, with my discussion with the peers, I broke this thing down into 3 pieces. I want to talk to you about the fabric. I want to talk to you about the pipe or the tubing. And I also want to talk to you about the fittings. And, of course, that's our hardware for what makes a chain link fence. That's the end result, right?
Yep.
So, from a fabric perspective, what we're seeing right now, bullet point number one, and this is a large difference here. Minimum 12, maximum 20-week delivery, with no change expected anytime soon. And what I mean by that is they couldn't even say, any of my peers in the industry couldn't say, well, Tony, we may see a level off by the end of the year. We may see a level off by the middle of next year. We may see a level off at the end of 2022. Every one of them collectively said, no change anytime soon. I don't have an answer for you, Tony. I can't tell you. And it all boils back down to where we were talking earlier with everything else, and that's raw material, okay? Yeah. So let's talk fabric first, okay? The challenge for the fabric production right now is rod, okay? It's the wire. It's the rod that you get, from the mills in order to put it through a weaving machine and be able to produce the fabric, okay? That's the biggest challenge. And again, if you look at the stair-step process where we line up on the totem pole, these wire weavers, these producers of fabric are challenged getting the rod because of the vehicle steel, market and the structural steel market. Those are the two primaries. I passed my good friends up in Tulsa a couple of weeks ago, headed to Nebraska, to the Southwestern Wire. Their yard is completely full of stock product ready to go, but we're going to talk about the challenges of why they're not getting it out quick enough here shortly.
Yeah.
The rod is the challenge from a fabric perspective, and then you add in the PVC coating or vinyl coating that someone mentioned earlier in here. It's even more of a challenge, okay? Well, aluminized product, which a lot of us see in commercial work.
Yep. No, we seem to have lost Tony. Maybe he's locked up a little bit. See if he makes it back for us. So one of the things too I see in chainlink is the weaving machinery, right? So I believe it was this last week. These weeks seem to blend together, but I believe this last week one of the major domestic weavers, the chainlink weaving machine went down, and they said to expect a 6 to 8 week time span on getting that weaving machine back up and running. So we could very likely see, we lost Tony. We could very likely see, an increased lead time again, even more so on chain link material, simply because the weaving machine went down. So now, to Tony's point, and we'll talk about it here in just a little bit, but to Tony's point, supply line is going to be an issue too. So once that weaving machine gets back up and running, there's no promises that'll impact the industry just really quickly. Tony, if you don't mind, can we restart that on the chain link?
Yeah, absolutely.
That way we can get it kind of a clean take here, because I think when we're talking about the YouTube, the YouTube platform, chain link seems to be like the keyword people are searching for in fence. Yeah. So I really want to make sure we get the chain link right.
Sure.
Let's back up and let's restart real quick. So how are we going to start? One second. So Tony, when we're talking about fencing, we've talked so far about vinyl and wood and ornamental. Now we come to chain link, pipe, tube, etc., fittings. Really, this chain link and the associated materials, I think, represent the lion's share of the fencing industry in general. Just because for commercial projects, it's mostly 90% at least chain link. So when we're talking about state of the industry, we've got to talk about chain link, tube, pipe, and fittings.
Yep, exactly. As I've told a lot of people, you may not be in the fence industry if you don't install chain link. Now, a lot of them says, I don't want to, but you know what it is.
Sure.
But you're exactly right. In my discussions with the peers, I broke the chain link, pipe, and tubing into three main components: the fabric, the pipe, and the fittings. So let's hit the bullet points real quick on the fabric side. So it's a broad spectrum here, but minimum 12, maximum 12 weeks of delivery with no change expected anytime soon. I've been giving you guys predictions on what my peers are telling me, saying that, end of the year, middle of next year, end of next year, they won't even step up and say, Tony, I have no clue, because they don't. They can't tell us. And it all affects the raw material shortages, okay? And as we talked about in the ornamental, the steel, all of that steel is being sucked up by the vehicle industry and by the structural steel industry. So now we're low on the totem pole. So we get our product when we get our product. But the biggest challenge for fabric, which is a steel product, is rod. That's the weaving wire that goes through the weavers. So even though these guys are trying to mass produce, meet production level demands and those type things, they're challenged by getting raw product rod. And then the second piece is the labor. And then the third piece is the transportation we're going to cover here momentarily.
Sure.
So the challenge for the fabric producers is the rod. It's the raw material. It's the log for the wood. It's the rod for the weavers, for the fabric. Okay. Most producers for fabric got very backlogged with the COVID pandemic because they had to go in and mitigate their whole facility. And then that backlogged us, and we've never caught up from that. And now we've got such a high demand on everything, and then shortage in these areas that we mentioned, and challenges with the transportation. That just adds more headaches to the whole big lineup. So again, 12 to 20 week delivery to the wholesalers in most cases, and then no change for a while, and understanding that it all has to do with the steel shortage.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's one of the things too is one of the major weaving facilities or the manufacturers that weave here domestically in the United States, their machine went down over this past week. Which means, and they say 6 to 8 weeks to recover.
Yeah.
Right? So now that's another 6 to 8 weeks of missed production and pent up demand. They're going to get added to whatever orders they already had in place. So I think we might start seeing this more, Tony, that these manufacturers are putting so much stress on their machinery. You'll probably start seeing those effects soon.
More breakdown. Yeah. Again, they're trying their best to keep up. They're trying to meet the demands. And like you said, I had not even thought about that. That's a very good point. They're probably putting more demand on their machines right now than they've ever been in their lifetime. Yep. And most machines are older, okay? And we older folks break down a lot easier these days.
Sure.
So that's a good point there. The same thing with the fabric is what I got reports on from the pipe and the tubing. Again, it goes back to that steel. I can't get the product to mold it, to mill it, to produce it. Those challenges are still there. What basically one of my confidants said was the outlook isn't great. Both producers, manufacturers, and suppliers are doing as much as possible, but the challenge is real. And the challenge is shortage on raw material, shortage on labor, shortage on transportation, or challenges on transportation. Sure. So if orders were locked in early, the supply will not occur, and it has become a price on ship demand. So to your point about the ornamental, it kind of primarily started there. When these orders are going out, you might have locked in, 30 rail cars of, chain link fabric or whatever the case may have been, or 100 truckloads. And this is what we negotiated. But now it is, hey, I'll ship it to you, but it's going to be priced at whatever it is the day that it's shipped. Are you good with that? You either take it or leave it. And I'm not saying that that's a bad business practice. It just is what it is because they have no choice.
Sure. Yeah, that's the thing is, we've got a 30% increase. And if you don't want to absorb it, there's someone out there that will because the industry needs inventory right now.
Yeah.
So that is very real.
And I think every manufacturer or producer of wire right now or fabric, is kind of like my friends up in Tulsa. They have the product. It's just the challenge of getting it downline to the suppliers.
Yep.
Again, we'll talk about that in a moment. So the third piece was those fittings. And, what we've seen with the fittings is that, prices are increasing, same challenges with steel, labor, and transportation. But one more component with the fittings is the challenge of the imported product, which is lowballing the price. And we're seeing barge loads coming in, and sometimes it's sub-level, subpar products that's being imported that may not be true galvanized product, or it may not be manufactured to the standards of ASTM. There's a lot of challenges with that import product when it comes to fitting. What you and I call a 2 7/8, it may be a 2 5/8, and the post cap won't even fit on top. Because their variances and ours are totally different. So be careful is the word that I want to say about imported fittings, and also be careful about your imported pipe and tubing, where they're making promises that they can send you a barge load, because the U.S. production is down or can't meet the needs or the demands. But yeah, it's a subpar product in a lot of times. Now, there's some good products out there. I mean, I've installed hundreds of thousands of feet of imported product. We all have, but just understand that they're trying to mass produce now, which is offering challenges to, the industry as well. So that's kind of the snapshot of those three pieces under the chain link and the fabric.
So I've got a little bit of insight on on import fittings. I was talking to a main wholesaler that deals in imported fittings, decent quality fittings. It's good stuff. I was talking to their manufacturer who out of India, which is where a lot of and Tony, correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is for fittings, for chain link fittings, three main import producers would be India, China, and Pakistan.
Absolutely.
Pakistan, we're not even going to talk about. Not an option for U.S. based purchasers. It's not an option.
Leave it alone.
So India is where a large portion of those fittings were coming through. Well, if you watch the worldwide news right now, they've got a hybrid version of COVID just running rampant through their country. So they're on pandemic version 2 right now, which means factories shut down, product isn't getting shipped out, not available. Exactly. So of the three, that means that leaves China as the third. Well, and please understand also, I'm a fence guy, not a world economics expert. But my understanding is that China has also rescinded. So they had export kickbacks. Kickbacks is probably not the correct word. Incentives to their steel industry that if they exported X amount of steel goods, they would get some incentives back. So China, in an effort to keep China's going through the same thing. They're building like crazy. They need to keep steel in the country. So they've rescinded those incentives, which now which just means it's more expensive to ship steel products outside of the country of China. So we can't talk about Pakistan. India's out, and China's more expensive.
Yep.
Which means that now imports is in the same trouble that domestic is. So now everyone's in that same boat of it's going to be more expensive, no matter where you.
And Joe, most of our fence contractors don't realize this, but there's only a very small handful of U.S.-based domestic fitting manufacturers. Yeah. It just costs so much to produce. And the old shops are getting older. There's not been a lot of new technology brought to the table or new fitting, industry organizations kicking off. So it is what it is. So when you got limited supply in the U.S., it's got to come from import. I mean, I remember 20 years ago running operations, we did. We had a lot of products that were imported. You talk to the wholesalers, they're getting a lot of imported products. Yeah. And I see some of the comments that's coming in over here about the containers and the cost. We're going to talk about that very specifically in a moment.
Yep.
But the bottom line is that all three of these pieces, which make up your hardware of your chain link industry, just understand, be patient. These guys are doing as best they can from production to manufacturing, production, all the way out to your wholesalers. And plan ahead, plan way ahead is the key on these projects. And they're not going to guarantee you a price over 48 hours in most cases, okay? Yeah. Unless you say, well, I had a guy tell me this week when I was talking to him, he says, I kept pushing me, I need a price. For something that probably would have cost $20, he said, okay, I'm going to give you a price of $22,000. The guy says, well, why are you giving me such a price like that? He says, what don't you get about, I don't know what it's going to cost in 6 months, a year from now. What's not fitting here? So it's relevant. And I feel sorry for our wholesalers because it's true. They're doing the best they can, to support our industry. And they have the challenges. It just is what it is. It's at the end of the day.
The manufacturers, their financial incentive is to make whatever they're making, right? That's how they make money. is they make their widgets and they ship their widgets, and then the bill goes out when the widget gets to the whole whoever it's going to. So if that widget is sitting on their lot, we've seen those comments, hey, this stacked to the sky, they haven't been paid for those widgets yet. Those widgets need to get on site before they can get paid for it. So they're kind of in a similar bind. I'm sure they're having meetings going, guys, get this stuff out of here because we need to get paid for it. Yep. We don't get paid until this lands at whoever we're selling it to.
Yes.
So, and we'll get more into that for transportation. But I think that's a pretty good look at chain link, both fabric, pipe, tube, and fittings. So, unfortunately, again, this is going to start sounding like a broken record. The problem is supply, both raw goods, whether we're talking about wire rod or whatever, and labor supply. This is going to start sounding very familiar. As you watch more of these videos, it's going to be a lot the same, right? Yep. So, and we can talk about building for a second too. That here in Southwest Missouri, we've got a major online retailer that is building a facility here, and it's 27 acres under roof. Now, you want to talk about a decent amount of iron going into that place. 27 acres under roof. That's a lot of metal.
All about the pecking order.
That's right. And talking about margin, this steel producer got paid better margin for steel beams than they do for wire rod. I'd almost guarantee it. So
absolutely.
Well, Tony, I appreciate it. I think that's a pretty good look into the state of the chain link.
Yes. Yeah, we got some good comments over here. Of course, a lot of it has to do with the container, costs and transportation and all. But let's take one or two of these pieces that they've talked about here, because I think it's relevant in the fact that collectively we can learn together. Because I wasn't aware of this mentioning comment from Joshua here. Josh,
I want to talk about that.
Yep.
Yeah. So Josh says one of them had a blowout in their galvanizing tank. The bottom of the tank developed a leak and has to be replaced. I hadn't heard that either, but I don't doubt at all. I am absolutely certain it happened. Just like the wire weaving machine went down. I think this illustrates the point that these producers are putting these machineries to use, under stress they probably haven't been under in 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
They're running these things as fast and as hard as they can. That tank, that galvanizing tank, it's probably had more galvanizing run through it than it has in the last 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
All things being honest.
It's true. It's true. If production level is at an all-time high.
Yeah. If I'm making widgets and the price I get paid for my widget is at an all-time high, I'm making widgets as fast as I can make them.
Absolutely.
We're pumping those things out. And if I've got a machine that I can run 24 hours a day with minimal oversight, hook it up. And don't stop running. We need somebody just to make sure we got stuff going in it and run that thing all day, every day. So I think we're already seeing those issues, right? Machinery breakdowns, shutdowns. I'm afraid we might start seeing them even more.
Yeah, that's a good point. I had not thought about that. When you mentioned it earlier, I said, whoa, that's another highlight of things that we need to consider moving forward.
And I don't know that it's happening, but I have to think if I'm making widgets and I've got a maintenance schedule that's every 12 days, I'm asking my team like, hey, what if it's every 14 days?
Yeah.
What if it's every 15? Is 12 days like a real thing, or is it like a we should thing?
Yeah.
Let's try 14 days and just see what happens. Because another couple days of production means another, X amount of dollars for my widgets.
Yep.
All right, Roger had to step out. He had domestic responsibilities. Absolutely okay, Roger. Jeff says the vessel freight is 3 times normal. So that's real. And I think the transportation is going to be an interesting subject to get into, because I would argue that transportation might be hitting import harder than it's hitting domestic, just because of the distance traveled for import goods. But we'll get into that here. We've got a few points to get to, and then we're getting into that.
Yes.
Again, talking about container costs and talking about ports of entry.
I got some great content on all of that Jeff and Josh has mentioned there.
All right, we'll get into it here in just a second. So now we're going to talk about ag fence. All right. So, Tony, when we're talking about the state of the fencing industry, we can't not talk about agricultural. When we're talking about fencing, there is a significant amount of agricultural fencing that goes in, especially if we're measuring it by the foot. Those guys put in miles and miles of fence on any given project. What is the state of the fencing industry in terms of the agricultural market?
Well, I'm going to go back and say exactly what you said. Most people, most fence contractors that really don't deal with the agricultural market, or farm and ranch is the term that I used to use on a smaller scale, it is an absolute significant and huge market out there. And with that, we've got some of the most prominent and well-versed individuals in the agricultural market out there making these installations and taking care of this agricultural market. So with that being said, they're seeing some of the same challenges. Now, in the agricultural market, what do you have? You have wood posts, you have steel posts, you have steel fabric, and and then you got all the additives, the components, and the hinges, and the hardware, and everything that goes into it. So it basically accumulates everything that we just talked about, in these other sessions. But most specifically, from my peers in the industry, they're telling me that most small quantity orders are relatively quick to get a turnaround on, from a fabric standpoint, okay? Because you can certainly understand that the ag market fabric may be a smaller percentage of the overall chain link fabric market. But if you put it side by side, it's probably a really close comparison. But those quantities are easier to get on the smaller, but the challenge is the large orders, the 15 miles, the 30 miles, the 100 miles, or whatever. And a lot of this type fence is used for DOT, highway, interstate type fencing. So, those guys that are hitting those markets heavy, they're either using a round post or a steel post. The steel posts are taking over a lot of the agricultural market because of the challenges that they had initially with the pressure treated round post. But at the same time, now they're seeing the challenges with the 2 7/8 or 2 inch, or inch and 7/8 or whatever steel pipes, and it has to do with the steel market that we talked about earlier. So the steel post and the wood post delays remain a challenge, which comes from our steel and wood markets, and that's kind of what I recap. Containers and transportation issues are added to.
Looks like we might have lost Tony again. He's going through some internet issues out there. So, and I'll bring this up when we talk about ag here in a minute. We'll redo the ag video here. But it sounds like what Tony's talking about is, the ag industry, the farm and ranch industry, is getting hit by, kind of from two fronts, right? From the chain link. What's that? Oh, there he is. We got him back. All right.
Good.
Tony, would you mind if we restart that one over?
Not at all. I know this connection's on my end. I'm having to go wireless off my
no, you're fine.
Cell phone here.
No, you're fine. I just want to be cognizant of your time. I know you're being really given of your time here, so I want to make sure we're cognizant of that. All right, so we'll start from the top. So, Tony, when we're talking about fencing industry, the state of the fencing industry, I think we need to talk about one of what could be the largest portions, which is the agricultural. And when I say largest portions, in terms of probably total foot installed of fencing, it's got to be the ag market. What do you think?
I agree 100%.
So what is the state of the agricultural sector of the fencing industry?
Well, the unique thing about the ag industry, what I used to call farm and ranch on the smaller scale of things, I got educated on that. Thank you to my good friends in the agricultural market. Basically accumulates everything that we've been talking about. It's the wood market, it's the steel market, it's the fittings market, it's everything, additive pieces, hinges, you name it, okay? It's everything inclusive. So everything that we've talked about with the wood market, the challenges there, we're seeing that with the pressure treated material posts, that these ag professionals are installing. We're seeing the challenges from the steel post market where, the challenges for steel, they can't get the product. A lot of the movement from wood post type agricultural fencing is moving to more of a steel post driven type market. Is prevalent. It's happening right now. So again, the demands in both of those areas has been some of the biggest challenge. My peers are telling me that the smaller order quantities of fabric is pretty much readily available. The big challenge is when you need 30 miles of fabric or, larger, like DOT, Department of Transportation on the interstates. Those are our big challenges for the ag market in getting not only the steel or not only the pressure treated posts for the bays and the trussing and all those, but it's the fabric that, production or producers have to handle from a manufacturing perspective. On top of those components and everything else we've talked about with the other pieces comes the container and transportation issues, which we're going to get into here more specifically, in a short time. But, delivery time on large orders is actually smaller than a lot of the other things that we've been talking about. These producers can actually get that product turned around in 10 to 12 weeks, where most everything I've been sharing with you in the other markets is 12, 14, 16 to 20 weeks. Yeah. So there are some good things happening in that particular area because they use such variances of products, and it's not the high demands that's in the chain link and the high demands in the wood and other segments of our industry.
That makes sense. So what I'm hearing, Tony, is they're kind of getting it from both sides. They're getting it from the wood side, but they're also getting it from, what we were talking about with chain link. The wire rod is probably a huge issue in the wire. Then of course we talked about steel tube as well. So they're getting hit from kind of both industries, supply issues in both of those industries, both wood and the chain link pipe and tube market.
Exactly.
Interesting.
I think the ag market was probably better positioned with inventory from manufacturers and not suppliers, but manufacturers that produce the wire, the fabric. And that's why they can ship that sooner or quicker. But yet the challenges are real for the wood and for the steel because that particular area of the inventory ramp up was not there.
Gotcha. Well, and just thinking this through, and I don't build agricultural fence, so I might be completely off base, but I would have to think that those manufacturers are set up for just large quantity manufacturing, because we're talking about a project that could be 15 miles when, an average commercial chain link project might be 1,000 foot, a couple thousand foot.
Well, another very important piece to consider is that you think about how much rod it takes to weave, 2 1/4 inch, 6 foot, 11.5 gauge fabric, right? Look at how much steel we have in 1 foot. Okay. Now let's take a 1 foot piece of agricultural fabric.
Sure.
It's a lot less rod. It's a lot less steel, but yet they still have the challenge of getting that rod to make that, but it's a lot less. So the quantity of needs for the agricultural market to manufacture fabric is a lot less demanding than it is on the chain link side. So you got to take those type of things into consideration. It's simple math if you really look at it. And some people just, kind of overlook things like that.
Yeah, but no, that makes sense. I hadn't even thought about that. So it would take less supply to manufacture a foot of their product versus, like you said, a 10-foot, 6-gauge chain link.
Exactly.
It makes sense. So what I'm hearing is that the agricultural market might be, while they're still feeling it, the effects of this might be in a little bit better shape than, say, the vinyl, wood, ornamental, or chain link sectors.
Yep.
Very good. Very good. Well, Tony, thank you. I appreciate you compiling your report of the agricultural sector and how they're being affected by the current pandemic that we're in.
Absolutely. Glad to be part of it.
All right. Very good. Very good. So Cannon's got a pretty good comment here. The silver lining: survive this whole supply chain ordeal, and we'll come out of the other side strong and tough, and very appreciative of normal.
Absolutely.
I think so. Here's the thing, Cannon. One day we're going to be grandpas. We're going to be like, oh yeah, you think you?
Hey, one day I am a grandpa. I got 6 grandkids. Listen to you young bucks in the industry. Y'all just trying to survive raising kids, man.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. Okay, that was an age thing. You slapped me. Okay, I'll take it.
No, I just mean one day though, we're gonna look back, and Cannon's point is spot on. Where
it is.
If I had sat down, if my grandpa was still around, I'd probably sit down with him and be like, "Hey, what was your version of this?" And he'd say, "Well, you know what? Like, you think you've got it bad. You
Yeah.
can't believe what it was like going through.
Oh, we're going to paint
Great
that
Depression.
picture of, we walked to school in the snow barefoot uphill, and, toting my sister on my back because I didn't want, it's all going to be fun. It's already going to be.
Uphill both ways, 10
That's right.
miles there, 20 miles back.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, that's right, Cannon, is that, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, and all those other, cliches have a point, right?
Yeah.
That you get through it, and then once you get through some really tough stuff, everything else just seems kind of easy. You're like, well, hey, listen, like, sure, 3 weeks lead time stinks, but I can remember when it was 16-week lead time. So, like, let's be appreciative we're not there, and let's just get through this 3-week lead time. That's absolutely where I see this headed.
Yep.
You bet.
Yep.
All right, guys. So all right. So we need the next one we're going to talk about is gate operators, and I'll be honest. Well, for me, gate operators is kind of right up there with agricultural. We don't do a lot of them, so I don't have a lot of direct knowledge. So this is something I'm really interested to get into with you, Tony. So let's get this started.
Yeah, sure. So the gate operator industry, as we know, there's really 2 or 3 main components that goes into that manufacturing process. It's the plastics, it's the microprocessor boards, and it's the steel framework and all the additives, the pulleys and the chains and everything else that goes into it. But it's pretty much made up of 3 components: electronics, plastic, and steel. Okay, and then there's some hybrid products out there.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, the gate operator manufacturing industry has been able to maintain this production after the mitigation through COVID. Okay. Now, there's still some supply chain challenges out there with smaller manufacturers of gate operators, but for the most part, your large manufacturers have kept up their end of the bargain, continue to do what they need to do. Even though there's challenges in all of those areas, it's a much smaller percentage of our market than it is for chain link, and like we talked about the ag. Okay, they can keep up because it's a smaller percentage on how much goes into that foot of fabric. So again, great job by that particular area of the industry. But when you think about microprocessor, you think about electronics, you think about chips and all the other things. And y'all know the nightmare that our vehicle industry is going through of waiting on a chip to get, those 5,000 vehicles out of the pasture. Okay, you've seen the pictures. A lot of manufacturers are seeing some of those things. The gate operator manufacturers are seeing some of those things as well. They're also challenged with some of the transportation issues that are plaguing us, and they're also challenged with some of the labor. But for the most part, we haven't seen much delay post-COVID with the arrival of product. And if I had to put an average on it, I would say probably 2 to 3, maybe 4 week max on delivery for manufacturers to get product to suppliers. And we have wholesalers that are selling it. We have direct distribution, selling it. So that's a good thing. But I'm very passionate about the gate operator industry. That was one of my wheelhouse markets in my career, and I just felt like that's the 6th piece of our disciplines. It's just all together, right? So again, if you take away from that is things are status quo, things are good. There's probably not going to be any change other than we've seen the price increases. No change on that anytime soon, unless some drastic thing happens. And I mean, that's the snapshot of the gate operator piece. There's not a whole lot more to add to it.
Well, in Tony, so that's kind of a relief, as we've been talking about the other sectors that are, a little bit more doom and gloom, right?
Yep.
Or, that are being hit hard. It's good to hear that there's at least one of the sectors that is having difficulty. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But maybe they're not being hit as hard.
Exactly.
Very good. Yeah. The interesting thing about gate operators is, you see that sector used by almost every other sector. When we're talking about, the 6 main sectors are vinyl fencing, wood fencing, ornamental, chain link, and ag. You see each one of those use their own version of automation.
That's right.
Right. So you see that sector used across all others.
Exactly.
Some of these other sectors, like we said, agricultural fencing uses a little bit from wood, a little bit from chain link pipe steel. You see some sectors interacting with others, but gate operators really interact with all of the sectors. So good to see that those guys are handling it fairly well. Oh no, Tony's locked up again. Okay, we were so close. We'll re-record that ending. Guys, let me know what you guys think. If you guys have questions for Tony or myself, but Tony's mainly the answers guy. If you got questions for Tony, drop them in the comments below. All right, Tony. So my plan here is we got through all the good content. I was just wrapping this up, so we'll just redo the wrap up and we'll call that one done.
I like it.
Well, Tony, I've got to say, when you're talking about gate operators really affect all the other sectors. So I like to hear that they are least affected because, if you think about it, if gate operators were affected in the same way that the other sectors are, it could really have an incredible impact on each and every other sector. So,
exactly.
I really appreciate you putting together your look at how the gate operator industry is looking and your state of the fencing industry report. I appreciate all your work.
Yep. Thank you.
All right, guys, we're getting to it. Now, I don't want to diminish any of the other sections of this video, but I'm really excited, Tony, to get into the labor and the transportation because we've said this for every other section, right? That hey, labor issue, transportation issue, it affects each and every sector of our industry, and honestly, it's affecting industries nationwide. Whether we're talking about roofing, plumbing, fencing, whatever.
Yep.
Labor, transportation are two of the biggest things.
Yep.
Let's get into it. So, Tony, when we're talking about the state of the fencing industry, we have to talk about labor. Because whether we're talking about labor on the manufacturing side, labor on the wholesale side, or labor on the contracting side, labor is a pretty big issue, and it's been pretty hard hit.
Absolutely. A year ago, the phone calls that I got was, Tony, tell me where I can find some labor. How am I going to fix this labor challenge? And then this year, that phone call turned to, hey, where can I get product? And hey, don't forget, I need some labor too. So labor became the second piece of the big equation. And we've talked about the challenges on the product delivery side. So now let's talk about this labor.
Sure.
Our industry, like you said, as well as any trade industry, it's been difficult. It's been a challenge. And I've told everybody from a labor perspective on the contractor level, your best bet is to train within, grow from within, and ask those people from within your company to find good candidates to come in and take over that have the same work ethic and attitude that those individuals have.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about this from the overall fencing market standpoint.
Okay.
It doesn't matter if you're a contractor that's challenged for labor or a supplier, a manufacturer, or whatever the case may be. We've been impacted tremendously by a labor shortage, okay, more so than any time in my 60 years of living, okay? I'm 60 years old, and, used to, I'd put a help wanted sign in the window of Jeffcoat Fence Company in Pearl, Mississippi, and if it was, if you could pass a drug test and you had a driver's license, man, I'd put you to work.
Yep.
Well, now I can't even get you through the door. But this is not a political issue whatsoever. It is what it is. Okay. Right. When the pandemic occurred and the stimuluses and the entitlements that went out to individuals that were in need and they took advantage of it, it was the right thing to do. It was absolutely the right thing to do. In my opinion on it, I'm telling you, I'm not an economist and I'm not a political viewpoint guy, and this is definitely not maybe an AFA perspective. We kept it too long. Okay, we kept paying way too long. Joe, you and I had a conversation about you trying to hire somebody. The guy says, man, I can stay home and make more money than that.
Yep. That's
reality, people. That's reality from the top all the way down to the bottom. Okay, so we've got to think how we're going to go about this in the long term. But what that does is that places that challenge on everything that we've talked about, in the other segments of our market, the industry, the wood, the chain link, everything. It's mill personnel. It's people on the line of weavers. Everything that we've talked about has a labor challenge right now. Yep. When I drove up to Nebraska and Ohio this year, I saw more help wanted signs in windows than I'd ever seen. And folks, it wasn't that little 8x12 window sign, help wanted. It was 6 and 4x8 pieces of plywood, man. Just show up. I'll pay you. I'll give you an iPhone if you'll go to work for me 6 months. It's ridiculous. And I hadn't got to tell you guys as much, but what I'm trying to get a point across to you is that this labor shortage, this labor challenge that we are in is not going to be fixed until these supplemental packages are over with and done, and people have to go back to work. And we've got a tremendous workforce out there, but when you can make more stay at home than you could going to work, I mean, it may be different from you and I. We're business owners, or we're those entrepreneurs. Man, I'd go dig a ditch and fill it up if to make $1. I'm not going to sit idle. Idle hands is causing problems in the world. Long story short, labor is one of the biggest issues of some of the production challenges and product challenges that you've had over this last year. End of story. There's nothing else you can really talk about.
Oh no! Did he lock up again? Maybe he'll come back. We'll see. Guys, as we're waiting for Tony to come back, why don't you let me know what you guys are seeing? I mean, I'm sure everyone's seeing the labor problems, right? So one thing that's kind of surprising is, so here in Missouri, our state governor had kind of followed the lead of other state governors in saying that they were, so the state of Missouri is no longer, I don't know what the wording is, but basically not passing through the federal part of the unemployment, right, which was a substantial part of it. I really thought that we would see more applications come through, and we're on week 3, 4, 5, something like that. It's probably a month ago now. Well, it looks like we lost Tony for good, but he'll be back. But we're about a month in, right, on no more federal unemployment portion. So we really thought that would bring the labor force back. Unfortunately not, so we're still not seeing an uptick in applications. We're currently hiring for a few positions that we have ads out on Indeed for. When we're talking about where we find labor, years past, it's been, so it started with Craigslist. Craigslist got a little iffy. So then it went on Facebook. We've had great success hiring off of Facebook. But in the last year, Indeed. And whether we're talking about production staff, fabrication staff, office staff, Indeed seems to be the place to be right now. Just in our, in one guy's experience, in my company's experience, Indeed seems to be where we're at. But we're still not seeing just this massive influx of resumes, for these job postings that we'd really expected. So it's kind of surprising, but let me know what you guys are seeing on your side of the industry when it comes to labor. Are you guys seeing, more applications come in, less applications? One thing I really want to talk to Tony about when he comes back is, so not only is there labor shortage, but now, listen, it's supply and demand, right? So if the supply is low and demand is high, what does that do to cost? The cost increases. So we just went through in the last week on our production side and went through another round of raises, because we're saying that, hey, if now we had to increase, our starting pay from $12 to, $17 is currently where we're at. Everybody else has to come up with it. So I'm excited to talk to Tony about that. Welcome back, Tony. I wish you could hear the audio on my side. The audio is a bit crazy. Let me try taking you off and putting you back on. The video's good, but the audio's kind of weird. All right, let's try it again. Can you hear me, Tony? Oh man, so it sounds like a voice. Let me do this. Let me take you off and then have you log back in. Give me just a second. Okay, so we'll try getting him to log back in. But I tell you what, I don't care who you watch do live video. You watch enough of these, and technical stuff just seems to go wrong sometimes. So I'm sorry, but anyway, yeah. So yeah, Josh is right. Yeah, Dark Tony. What a voice that was. That was something else. But yeah, so cost of labor is going up. So yeah, and that's a conversation that we're starting to have with our customers. Is not only have we had a cost of material increase, but now we're going to have a cost of labor increase. Let's bring Tony back. See if he starts going. I think he is still. Tony, can you hear me? This is so bizarre. I don't know. Like, it sounds like Darth Vader.
Is that the way it sounds everybody else too?
I don't know. I don't even know what you're saying just because it's so crazy.
They only teach two languages, there's English and Redneck. Else I'm not responsible.
I don't know. I'm not sure what you're saying. Let me Let me try something real quick. So let me do this. Mute, maybe? Try mute, unmute, bring back. No, I still, because I can hear my reverb on his end, and it's still, it makes me sound like Darth Vader too.
Test 1, 2, 3. Test 1, 2, 3.
No, let me edit my. All right, let's try this again. I still hear it. Still sounds like Darth Vader. All right, maybe. Can you give me 1, 2, 3?
Test 1, 2, 3. Test 1, 2, 3.
Man, it's still doing it. What is that? Oh man. Well, Tony, we might have to cut this short. I'm not sure. There's some sort of technology issue between the two of us. Yeah, that's a good call. So Josh said, have him call you and put him on speaker. Let's do this. We'll try muting, and then I'm going to call Tony. I'm going to try giving you a call. Let's see. So recent. Tony, give him a call.
Hey, you got me?
Oh, there you are. There you are. There you are. Yes, sir. All right. Yep. Yeah. It was just weird. It was. It sounded like Darth Vader. It was really crazy. Really crazy.
I've been called a lot in my career, but never a Darth.
Never Darth Vader. Huh? Well, first time for everything, I say, guys.
Technology.
That's right. That's right. All right, I'm gonna bring you up on video, but I'm gonna mute you. That way, we get the audio from the phone and we get the video from the screen, and we'll see how this goes.
Okay.
A little bit of a delay. All right. Well, so when we're talking about labor, Tony, so the one interesting thing that we should talk about too is, obviously there's a supply issue. And when we're talking about all things economics, when we start talking about supply, we have to talk about demand and then therefore the cost of the good or whatever we're talking about. So supply is low, demand's high. That means the cost is going to go up.
Absolutely. That's been our biggest challenge is, the price increases for a lot of our contractors. But again, that's all the way up the chain, from the suppliers all the way up, because the raw products, the additives, the pieces that have to be put into that product to get to the consumer, it's all a domino.
Yeah, absolutely. And so what I was saying before was that we're having that conversation with our clients now and saying that, hey, we just got through material increases and we're still getting material increases. Don't think those are over yet. But now we're also going to have labor increases. So our prices are going up yet again.
Yeah. Joe, we've talked about the labor piece and how it affects not only us as contractors, but everybody up the line. That segments us right into what our good friend Jeff Shelburne was talking about earlier, and that's these container prices, because I don't think that we can talk about, the labor without tying it into the challenges that our transportation area is having as well.
Yeah, let's roll right into transportation, because I think you're right. I think those two are linked so closely.
It's too close to separate, I guess I'd say.
I agree.
So, can y'all hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. So what Jeff put on the screen earlier was that container costs have skyrocketed. And you made a point earlier in the presentation about imported products especially. And as we know, our industry has imported products.
Sure.
So now an example that I'll give to you is part labor, part container. So you've got a barge that's shipped from overseas that comes in, is trying to get into the port of LA or wherever the case may be, and they have to drop anchor off the coast because they can't get their barge or their boat into port.
Yep.
So why is the port behind? Why is the port delayed in being able to get these boats in, get them unloaded, and get them done? Well, it boils down to it takes 100 people to unload a barge, and they're working with 25.
Sure.
So 25 people are unloading the barge. It's going to take them 4 times as long.
At least, yeah.
So again, I use simple math quite often, but that's the key. Okay, so where a barge would usually get unloaded in a day is taking 4 days now.
Yeah.
So you've got 500 of these barges sitting there.
Yep.
Not only is our market suffering from that, but I want you to think about, and this was an example that was given to me, think about the agricultural market, fruits, vegetables, and other things that are being imported into our country.
Sure.
They're setting off the coast for 3 to 4 weeks, and they're having to just throw it away because they can't get it in to get it unloaded.
Yeah, it's rotted by the time it gets in.
What's that going to do? It's going to drive prices up on all that stuff.
Yep.
So that's relevant. And where a container used to cost, $1,500 to $2,000 to get from a boat to a train to a depot to where it can be put on a truck and get to your place, okay, one container all the way, those containers are falling into bid wars now of $10,000 and $12,000 cost in order to do it.
Yeah.
Their attitude, the container world is of the attitude, well, if you want it, tell me how much you're willing to pay.
You'll pay. Yeah.
And that's basically where we're at. So you add on the additional cost for labor or lack of labor, on the manufacturing end, the production end, to the wholesale end. For it to get to that wholesaler, to get to you, okay, they got to figure in this container cost.
Yeah.
And that's in every segment of everything that we're doing. Okay. Now,
yeah.
Not only is the container issues a big deal for the imported products, but let's talk about what one of our listeners said earlier about the Pacific Northwest mills having stockpiles of lumber.
Yep.
Almost 6 ready to go. They're challenged with the same thing. Okay. They don't have transportation. They don't have 18-wheeler trucks because, they got 100 trucks on their lot to be able to drive. They only got 25 drivers.
Yep.
Okay. So it's all a domino effect. It's all one thing on top of the other. And then once it goes from the truck, it goes to the train. Well, the train people have the same challenges.
Yep.
People put it on the trains.
Yep.
It's all a labor issue. Everything that we talked about today is labor sensitive.
Yes.
End of story.
Agreed.
And until we as a country decides, okay, enough's enough, get everybody back to work, a lot of this stuff's not going to clean up. A lot of this stuff is not going to give us any light at the end of the tunnel anytime soon.
Yep.
Now, again, I'm certainly not an economist. I'm certainly not trying to go down any political viewpoint.
Sure.
I'm sense, okay?
Right.
The common sense is if we don't have the manpower to do everything that we need for the fencing industry to get this product, to the yard, to where our contractor still challenged to get an employee to go install it. That's wishful thinking to get back to that anytime soon. It's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah.
So the transportation issue is the second biggest piece, in my opinion, behind labor that's causing all of these other pieces that goes on. Yep. So to kind of wrap up those two pieces, you got the raw material shortages, and then you got the production and delivery challenges, yep, which basically equals a price increase. I mean, those are the four pieces, right?
Yep.
And we just have to deal with it. We have to understand it. And I told you earlier today that I got a good friend that's been doing the wood market for 70 years. He said, Tony, I've never seen anything like this.
Yeah.
He said, hopefully we'll never see it again. But I also got a good friend that said that he's been doing, the wholesale distribution supply for over 40 years. And he made the same comment to me, Tony, I've never seen anything like this. It's put more stress, more challenges, more headaches on our industry than we've ever seen in our lifetime. And I'm a 40-year veteran. Okay, yeah. I've never seen. I lived 2000. I lived 2007, 8, and 9. Yeah. I get it. But at the end of the day, a lot of our new contractors are having more challenges and say, "Wow, what did I even do this for?" Than ever before. So, yeah. That's kind of the big snapshot, in my opinion. Yep. Again, I'm not an economist. I'm certainly, not that guy that you can go to the bank on. But this is information that I'm getting from a lot of good peers in the industry that are giving me good data in order to keep our industry up to date. Because without this, you're going to be asking those questions. And unfortunately, we can't get this to everybody. But those that listen, those that take the time to invest in listening to these videos and these YouTube segments, they're going to learn something that's going to help them. And I'm going to end this statement with what we started with, Joe. What we're talking about today will be different on Monday. Yeah. We're talking about that 10,000 foot piece. Yeah, this is accurate as of today. And I asked you. I mean, I know my friend Jeff was saying it earlier, and Josh chimed in there as well on these containers, these transportation challenges. Yeah. But I mean, are you and others seeing some of the same things? Yeah, we are. And that's the thing is the container issue. It's a big one. It really is. I mean, so again, let's talk about the main manufacturer of containers, China. And you have some others, but if you look at the main production of containers in the world, China has the lion's share of it. And China, good, bad, or indifferent, China's priority is China. So if there is a shortage of these things, they will keep them for themselves first, and then they will give them out to everyone else. And that just means that drives the cost up. If less of these things are available, then they will cost more. Again, supply and demand, right? So there's less of them available. There's also been, so this year there's been 2 container ships capsized, which means 30,000 of these things per ship go to the bottom of the ocean. So one of them was too deep to try to recover. The other one is recoverable. So last I heard, now this is a couple weeks old, but they had just started the recovery efforts. The crazy thing is, not to get the stuff inside the containers. They wanted those containers back. The containers are the most expensive piece of the puzzle. Yeah, they said, hey, insurance will write off the rest of whatever's inside. We need those containers. We need them back on the market today. Yeah, that's nuts. That is absolutely crazy. So yeah, containers is, when we're talking about imports, containers is the thing. So another component of this import is also clearing customs. Again, it's a labor issue. There's less customs enforcement officers available to clear these containers, and more containers coming through the ports than are typical. So they would need a larger number of officers just to begin with to deal with the current levels that they have. But they not only don't have more, they have less than they should be using. So
And in my experience, so my experience is based on buying shark hinges from Forney Fence out of Texas. I talked to Chris down there probably weekly saying, hey, when can I get more hinges? I need more hinges. And he says, Joe, they're sitting in a container in a ship outside the harbor. They're waiting to come in, or we've got 3 containers on the dock right now that are just waiting to clear customs. And so that's just one more layer of complexity to this that, yes, there's a labor shortage on unloading the ship, but even once it gets unloaded, there's a labor shortage to clear these things. Yep, we lost you again on video. But
yeah, I got you here on the phone.
Yeah, there's a labor shortage in general, and I think that's really the gist of this whole discussion is it really evolves around labor.
It really does. Again, every piece that we've talked about, from every discipline all the way through the whole process, it is labor.
Agreed.
Everything.
Agreed.
There's nothing that we can do about it. Nobody wants to hear it, but it's relative. But I think we, as professionals in the industry, need to make our contractors aware of.
Yeah.
Sooner or later, we're going to see a crash. We're going to see an economic downturn. And, I did a lot of research on, economic downturns, or what would be called an economic decline, a couple of weeks ago, just to kind of keep myself primed up and educated on this. Again, I've lived through 2000, 2007, 8, 9, and 10. But the 3 main components of that is when you see your unemployment spiking, which we know we have, okay? Yeah. Oil prices going out of the ceiling, which is happening, okay? And your government spending is at an all-time high and continues to grow. Those are the 3 pieces that are going to define your economic decline. Yeah. And when you see interest rates going up, which we have continued inflation going up, we are going to see a crash sometime soon. Now, sure. I can't say 6 months or 2 years or 3 years from now, but I'm just telling you, again, I'm not an economist, but everything I read, everything that I research, and the people that I talk to that's a lot smarter than me when it comes to the economic aspect of this industry that's lived through these type things in our fencing industry, it's coming.
Yeah.
Point there to every professional fence guy out there, yourself and everybody else, is position yourself and prepare yourself for when that happens. I can't give you that light at the end of the tunnel time frame. I'm just saying It's inevitable. It's coming. We cannot sustain what we're doing right now as a country and not see a crash sooner or later. And, even though we as an industry are so resilient, we're not, it's going to impact us too.
Yeah. Well, it can't not affect us. It's absolutely going to hit us hard. And economists have been saying this for a while. We're, depending on who you talk to, 11, 12 years into a really good economy, a strong growing economy. There has to be a pullback. And so now the economists are saying, hey, guys, this could be it. Like this, we could be leading up to that. The thing with the unemployment rate being at all-time high, there needs to be some sort of that's not real, right? There needs to be some sort of number, an unemployment number that is based in reality. Because to your point, I mean, you drive through town and you see help wanted signs everywhere. I mean, every store is looking for help. Everyone is. So that clashes directly with these reports you see that say unemployment are at all-time high. It's like, wait a minute. They are. So I guess, yes. So technically, yes, unemployment is. But we have businesses out here that would love to hire this workforce that is currently not working. And so what's going to happen? What I see happening is labor costs are going to go are the next thing to spike, right? So where at Ozark Fence, one guy's experience, where we would have started someone in the $12 to $14 range with no experience. We're going to train you. Just come work for us. 12 to 14. Now we're in the $17 to $20 range.
Yeah.
Just to come to work, So it makes me laugh. So I drove past McDonald's this morning that had again a help wanted starting at $11 an hour. Like, well, you are so out of luck because it's just not going to happen. So that's what I think is going to happen is these businesses are going to realize $11 an hour is not realistic. We're going to have to pay 12, 13, 14, 15, whatever the number is, to bring this workforce back. And then therefore the cost of whatever widget you're making has to go up. Our price of fence is based on the cost of materials, the cost of labor, the cost of overhead. Right. When you start, when you start moving those numbers, you got to move your price. You have to. So I think that's going to be the thing. But, well, I tell you what, Tony, we are 3 hours into this thing. So we have gone significantly over time, and I am so incredibly thankful that, each and every time I reach out to you, the answer is always yes. But before I even get the question out, like, hey, Tony, what do you think about, yep. Oh, okay. Well, maybe let me finish. But no, yeah. Yeah, right. I'm going to remember this. I'm saving this knowledge. But no, listen, whether it is you just completely pouring yourself into, the fence installation school, or it is being there for AFA members the last time you were on, the comments in that were just incredible. The comments after the fact of like, hey, I reached out to Tony and he really did help me immediately. This isn't an act, so you're one of the most giving people of your time that I know. And I just want to say thank you because I think that is huge.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I tell everybody, I'm here, executive director is a title, but I'm just Tony. I'm a fence guy. I love this industry. I love this association. And I think thanks to all the members, that's what makes our organization so good. Without members, we don't have an organization.
Sure.
So thank you for being a member.
Well,
and this type, content provides information to the industry as a whole.
Yeah.
And hopefully they will see why it's important to be part of an association, which we did through the pandemic.
Sure.
We grew tremendously through that pandemic time because we weren't selfish. And
right.
I've never been selfish. Our organization is not going to be selfish, and we're here to help promote and educate, and that's our goal. Well,
I think that's why we mesh so well, Tony, is because we both believe that success comes through education, right? And a rising tide. I say this all the time: a rising tide raises all the ships. If we can raise the level of our industry, everyone in that industry benefits, and we can.
You've seen our tagline on all this education: professionalism through education.
Yeah.
We educate, we learn together, we get better, and we're going to be a better professional. And you've heard my elevator speech. There's no reason why our industry can't be looked upon as a trades industry, just like the electricians and the plumbers.
Yep.
Have those level of certifications and licensing in place to where we have that. We have the knowledge, we have the professionals. We just got to keep pushing these buttons to get to that point, and that's what we're all about.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Is because you see the comments from those outside the industry. They're like, obviously my channel is called The Fence Expert. I get it, but they're like, a fence expert? Like, who could be fencing? Everybody does fencing. Like, well, no. Like, not everyone is going to be able to pull off, some of the projects that fencing professionals pull off. Listen, like, we're all in the same Facebook groups where we see the non-professionally installed fences, right? And we do a fair amount of business fixing those fences and replacing those fences. So it is. If you come in with the thought that, hey, anybody can do this, you're in for a rude awakening. Like, it is a professional trade, and it should be recognized as that.
It is.
So. Well, Tony, I think the next video we do, and it'll be a little bit. We'll give this a little bit of time. We'll give you some time to recuperate here.
There you
But judging by the Facebook comments in our conversations, I think the next one we talk about is you guys have a new designation coming out.
Oh, yeah.
You've got the operations. What the business operations school is that? I'm sorry, I might have butchered that. Is that the title?
No, you're close enough. It's the Fence Operation Manager School.
Okay.
And it's a little bit different from what we call the Fence Contractor Business School.
Yeah.
Where we're basically teaching that operations management piece, which is what I call the quarterback of the operation. You sell it, you got to plan it, and that's where more people burn $100 bills in that operations piece than even on the installation side.
Yep.
So my good friend Josh Glover, Veronica, some other folks have really plugged in and helped us get this content ready. We will roll that school out in November.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'd love to do a presentation broadcast on that prior to that event.
Yeah.
Let's just talk about AFA University as a whole.
Right.
And I talk about these new programs. So,
Absolutely.
You saw the passion that was there
Yeah.
in Nebraska.
Yeah.
Not just from me or Alan or Ken or Mark. The passion was from those individuals that were there. You, Sean, and Ken, and so many others that were there. That just says, man, I got more out of this in 3 days than I've got in the last 3 years.
Yep.
That's what we're in it for. That's our goal.
I walked away from that event saying, I wish I brought everybody. Like, we should have shut it down and brought everybody to this. Now then we could have had been, everyone could have been through it. Now we're going to have to shut down in November, and everybody's coming in November, and that's just the way of it. No, I mean the amount of education you guys crammed into 2 days was unreal. Like, it was really worthwhile. Now, and here's the thing is, I went into this and my team was saying, now you're going through installation school. Yeah. You don't install fence. Like, you run the business office. You don't install the fence. Like, yeah, but we all get better by doing, right? So, and it's not all the training, right? The training is a huge component of it, but it's also the networking with other professionals while you're going through the training.
Yeah.
So
Sure.
I would love for that to be kind of our next conversation, is that November date gets closer. And yeah.
Josh's comment down there. Look, I'm getting my money's worth out of him today.
Uh-oh.
I'm actually working on it right now.
On a Saturday. All right.
Thank you, Josh.
It's something that I'm really interested in going through the business school. I've talked to Dan Hardy is who I talk to most about it, just because he and I talk pretty regularly anyway. But so that's on my radar getting through. But also I want to go through the operations school, because you're right. I mean, I'm sure that's where, if we're talking about where do we burn $100 bills, I'm sure that's it. Just through inefficiencies. But the problem is you don't know what you don't know, right? So going through this is going to highlight areas where, like, okay, we can be more efficient here, or we can get to this end result quicker by using this process. That's what I'm incredibly interested in. So
the key to that is learning from other professionals that's been there, that's done it,
that's
had successes and also had failures.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Right.
You put it all together to what we share. And that's the key.
Well, that's the thing is, when I went through the chain link fence installation, like, listen, I've installed chain link since I was a kid, but while we were there, there's 2 or 3 things where I went, oh, okay, there's a different technique for this that would make it quicker. Sorry. It's a worked up, I get dry throat. Anyway,
There you go.
Tony, thank you. It is kind of where I was going with that. From me, from my company, I would hope from our industry, thank you. I mean, you're a guy that's at the forefront on elevating us, like you said, elevating the profession through education.
Thank you.
Very good. Well, guys, I appreciate you guys tuning in for 3 hours and 13 minutes. Holy cow. Guys,
That's unbelievable.
it really is. It really is. I appreciate you guys tuning in. But for now, I'm Joe Everest, the fence expert, reminding you that good fences make good neighbors. And I'll see you guys next time.